Thank you so much. Thank you. I hope everybody's good. Thank you for attending this session this morning. We have actually two sessions. One that starts now at 11 to 12:30 on reporting methods and the basics of systematic reviews, and then we do have a session coming up at 1 to 2? Yeah, 1 to 2:30. That will be more about searching. But this first session, I'll share my screen, will specifically be about search strategies and method requirements. Some of you may be seen me before around in the library. I think we probably have some students and participants from the College of Medicine, and that's where my office are. I'm the director for the National Medical Library, and I do one of the things that I do is that I work with research teams with systematic reviews and meta-analysis, and also provide workshops and support in this area. I will close off my video here and we will start the presentation. So in this first part, we will have a look at the basic of systematic reviews and systematic reviews methodology and reporting guidelines. We will look at the definition of systematic reviews and special requirements compared to literature reviews, which is maybe a form of studies that most of you have come across before. We will look at the connection between systematic reviews and evidence-based medicine, the role of systematic reviews in the society, and the systematic review process, recent development and different type of systematic reviews, time requirement, teamwork, reporting guidelines, as mentioned, which is a huge part of these kind of studies, as we will see. And also how to register a protocol and using systematic review software. I do not think that I actually can see the chat at the same time I'm presenting, but maybe you can raise your hand, and if I can get some help, maybe to unmute the mic of participants, if you would like to contribute or have a question during the session.
Linda, I will follow the comments. So if there is any question, I will let you know.
That is lovely, and please feel free. Yes, thank you. I appreciate it. And please feel free to ask a question or add anything at any time for this session. We will have possibility for questions in the end, but I'm absolutely totally fine if you have something, and I will be happy if you have something to contribute with during the session as well. So we will start with the definition of what is a systematic review. Because sometimes you can see the word or the word systematic review being misused in describing other type of reviews than what actually is the requirement for this kind of publication. And we have a handbook that is very commonly used, come from the Cochrane collaboration, the Cochrane Handbook for Systematic Reviews and Intervention. These are one of the key publications and also guidelines within the area of systematic review studies. So I have got the definition from that handbook in this slide. And a systematic review, according to the Cochrane Handbook, is a review that attempts to collect all empirical evidence that fits pre-specified criteria in order to answer a specific research question. It uses explicit systematic methods that are selected with the view to minimize bias, though providing more reliable findings from which conclusion can be drawn and decision made. So the key part for systematic review is that it's an attempt to collect all empirical evidence for a specific a research question that is also specified with predefined criteria. And it uses methods, very strict methods that aims to minimize the bias, not only in the material that is used, but in the process itself. And many systematic reviews, they also have a meta-analysis. There could be meta-analysis that are made by using or analyzing a specific set of papers only. But the most common module for meta-analysis is that they follow together with a systematic review. So there's a systematic review together with a meta-analysis that summarize not only the content of the papers as in the systematic review, but also the statistical part of these papers and create new statistics. So basically, a systematic review presents stronger evidence compared to individual studies. Individual studies are based on a specific population group, a specific geographical area, etc., that make them that is limiting, you know, the strength of the recommendations. But with systematic review, which aims to collect all possible evidence within a specific research question, we collect the individual studies on a specific topic, and these studies are handled in a rigorous and systematic screening, selection, analysis, and reporting process, and together then summarized in a systematic review or a systematic review and meta-analysis. And the systematic review then will have a much more stronger recommendation and conclusion as it's combining all the studies available in the world on this specific topic that is outlined in the systematic review. So it will give a stronger recommendation compared to a single paper. And systematic reviews compared to other type of reviews has a very, very specific research question. I have brought an example here, a question that is used for one of the publications that we have recently published about continuous glucose monitoring. So the systematic review question in this case is benefits of the, or this is actually a title rather than a question, but same, benefits of the addition of continuous or flash glucose monitoring versus standard practice using self-monitored blood glucose and hemoglobin A1C in the primary care for diabetes mellitus. So this is a specific, it's about primary care, and it's about patients that have flash glucose monitoring versus the self-monitoring blood glucose. So it's a very, very specific topic. And when constructing the research question or the title for the review, we often use the PICO or the PICO module to do so. And the PICO module, I'm not sure if all of you are familiar with that, but that's basically a module where you make sure that you have all the components need to ask a specific question for a systematic review included. You, for example, should have a title or a research question that includes the population or the patients, if it's in medicine, which many systematic reviews are, which we're going to talk about that. The intervention or the issue should be included together with a comparison of the intervention. Optional, could be excluded depending on the research question, and then the outcome. So all of these things should be covered and described both in the title and the research question. And the research question will later on determine the workload, the number of papers that you go through and review and have to screen. So it's very important that to put a lot of work into and make sure that you have a research question and a title that will give you the result that you need to answer your question, but also not too much material to work with. Depends on what you're doing. If you're screening a huge area, which is not common in systematic reviews, but it could happen, then you will have a lot of time to go through all these papers and work with them. While if you have a more narrow question, as in any research projects, there will be lesser information found and handled, because these research papers are fully depending on what type of information you have found. And the type of information that will be found, the search that we put together, will depend on the research question. So to support this work in systematic reviews, there are also more specification, pre-specified inclusion and exclusion criteria. What are we really looking at? So for the example title that I showed on the previous slide, the inclusion criteria, for example, is patients of any age with diabetes type 1, type 2, under the care of primary care provider, including those co-managed with an endocrinologist, etc. And in the sorry?
انتي أفنان الكتبي من طرف هنيدة، عشان هذا الرقم رقم إماراتي. إيش رأيك نتواصل عن طريق الرسالة الصوتية أحسن، أو اتصال عن طريق خليني أشوف.
Hello, I'm sorry, I can't understand. I'm sorry, I can't understand.
Okay, I think it's by mistake.
Maybe yeah,
okay,
no
I muted here. Okay, you can continue.
Yeah, no
okay.
worries, no worries.
Okay.
So back to our examples. I'm very aware of this is a little bit medical still, but we will go through other examples as well. But as you can see here also, we have exclusion criteria showing, for example, that looking at this diabetic patient, we do not look at those who was critically ill, who were hospitalized, who had used a closed loop system. We don't look at studies with less than 20 participants. And we also specify what type of studies that will be included. For example, we're only looking at English language. So these kind of inclusion exclusion criteria are required to be specified for the review together with the research question before you start. So everything should be very clear in what you're looking at and what is your inclusion and exclusion in regards to the details of your research question.
Excuse me, Ms. Linda, I think we have one question.
Yes, of course, please.
One student raised his hand or her hand. Okay, go ahead.
I can't hear, I'm afraid.
My question is regarding the exclusion criteria, inclusion and exclusion criteria.
Yeah.
Would that be considering the quality of the publication? If I, for example, targeting certain journals, or I target the journals, not the conferences, or
yeah.
this will be biased?
Yes. Yes, so of course it will, you define kind of what type of, thank you, it's a very good question. And yes, absolutely, as we can see here, see if I can go back. We can say, for example, that we only include peer-reviewed published materials, right? And not include non-peer-reviewed materials or conference abstracts or conference presentation or for example, what shall we say, preprints, which is not just published papers that hasn't been peer-reviewed. And that, of course, in the inclusion exclusion criteria are things that we line out to make sure that we present exactly not only what we're going to do and what we're including, but also the level of the evidence of the literature that we will consider in creating the systematic review and meta-analysis. Yeah. So absolutely, a very good question, and that is part of and one of the strengths of being specific with inclusion and exclusion criteria. Thank you. That answers your question.
Yes, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. And it will be more. We will get to more examples while we're going through the PowerPoint. So I think that most of you have probably, you may be familiar with systematic reviews already, but just to have a comparison, because all of us has probably worked with or read a literature review or a mini review before, and the difference is that a systematic review do follow a very, very specific methodology. And this methodology is not to be changed. Every systematic review and meta-analysis should follow the same structure. There could be all other different reporting methods, but you should follow the set reporting methods. While a literature review then have lesser strict formats. There are some formats in the journals, for example, in what way you should publish the review, but you have a much more larger space to elaborate on that yourself. And there is not so many strict steps included, and you are not required to report on every step you are doing in the same way that we have to do in systematic reviews. And looking at some general differences between systematic reviews and literature reviews, because in systematic reviews, as we have talked about then, and connecting to your great question just about, they build on very focused questions. And it's most of the time we include high-level overview of primary research, peer-reviewed research in systematic reviews. While literature reviews then, you can use whatever you need to get to your point, right? Whatever suits your need to answer your question, to make your point, you can include it. Of course, with some restrictions in regard to what is expected in an academic context, but it's not as strict as in a systematic review. And for the systematic review, the goal is to answer a very focused clinical, or doesn't have to be clinical, but any research questions to eliminate bias. While in a literature review, you provide a summary, and it's a very biased way of research, because you basically search for and select papers and information that suits your need to get your point through. And in systematic review, you will have to have specific specialized competence in the area you are researching, compared to a literature review, which is a great way of learning. Doing a literature review will get you some background knowledge and more in-depth knowledge of a specific topic, while in a systematic review, you have to have this special competence before you start. And you can see here also that regarding questions, we often use a PICO or a PECO to answer those questions, to make a very structured question compared to a little bit more broad general topics that you can see in literature reviews. And number of authors is also included here, because a literature review, you can easily do it by yourself or with a friend or two, while a systematic review will require a team. The absolute minimum team members for a systematic review will be 3. But most systematic review have more team members than that. They are normally quite large, and also we work internationally with team and specialists, because again, this requires special knowledge, not just in the field, but also with methodology and in meta-analysis or statistical methods to be able to produce a good report. And this takes time, as I'm going to demonstrate for you. So the literature review, you can do it quickly, like a weekend, a week, or a month, depending on what you're looking at. But when it comes to systematic reviews, these take years. The average is 18 months, but I can tell you that I've been involved in more than 100 systematic reviews, and only one systematic review have made it, all these 100 have made it within the time frame of 18 months. So 18 months, yeah, it's average, but it can take a longer time. So this is not something that you put together in a shorter time frame or have as a goal to have something published quickly. This is a quite large undertaking. And as I mentioned then, it's a lot about reducing bias in systematic reviews. We want to have end result at high quality with a minimum risk of bias included. While literature reviews are high biased, as in the selection and the process are not conducted as per specific reporting guidelines. I have talked quite a lot about, I have shown you quite a few medical examples, and indeed it is still the case that systematic reviews are mostly produced within medicine, but definitely there is a change. And I will show you some slides shortly, but systematic reviews are an interest of different disciplines today. But the background of systematic reviews is within evidence-based medicine. And the first systematic reviews that was produced came out in mid-1970 approximately, but they were not at all on the same, had the same structure. You probably couldn't recognize them as systematic reviews as you see today. And evidence-based medicine, you can see David Sackett here, picture of him. He's the father of evidence-based medicine from McMaster University in Canada. And evidence-based medicine developed in the mid-90s first. And one of the key publications that actually were written by David Sackett was Evidence-Based Medicine, What Is It and What Isn't It, in British Medical Journal. And you can say that that's kind of a milestone there, mid-90s, 1990s, where we can see also an increase of published systematic reviews and meta-analysis, and increased interest for publishing systematic reviews and meta-analysis. And you can think that things, now we're talking a lot, I think also you have heard about systematic reviews more increasingly last year, and you can think that is something been around for quite a while, and it has, but it was only some pioneers in medicine in the mid-1990s that were engaged in this field, and it's actually first now as we speak where the peak of the development of systematic reviews happening. If you're familiar with the database PubMed, I think for you who are from medicine, you will know what PubMed is, but this is a key resource for medical and health sciences. And there is a mesh included. That's a medical subject heading, like a thesaurus inside that database, guiding us to the correct format for a description of different medical terms. And they are very quick. As soon as there's like SARS, MERS, all these things, COVID-19, they're very quick to get this list updated with the latest conditions and new diseases. But looking at systematic reviews, the term for systematic reviews, publication type and topic, was actually not added to PubMed until 2019. I was very surprised to see this, because also me, I thought that this was a topic that was more common than it actually is, already before the late 2010s, but it is not. So right now is when the peak of and the main developing of this kind of research methods happening. And as I mentioned, there is an increased interest of these methods also outside the medical field. I have mentioned a couple of times evidence-based medicine and evidence-based practice. And I just want to bring this slide up, because for you who are maybe in other field, this may be a new area, evidence-based practice. So to just explain this way of working, it's about practical work, right? Where where physicians in this case, as this is developed within evidence-based medicine, but it can equally be any practitioners, use his or her clinical or professional experience together with the best external evidence, as in the best latest published research in the area, and together with the patients or persons' value and expectations. And that all these circles, all these areas are equally important. It's super important to have good professional skills to match that with the latest published evidence in the specific area and the need and expectation and values of the person that you are working with. So, for example, translating this to a teacher, the teacher maybe be in a situation where he or she are facing a bullying situation at school and has a lot of experience, but can then, working evidence-based, also take the latest published evidence about bullying and handling that specific bullying situation, consult that together with looking at the students' specific needs and values. Looking at the specific situation for the students, consult the literature and based on their own experience. So that is basically the foundation for working evidence-based practice. For working evidence-based. And within evidence-based practice, systematic reviews are considered to be the highest available evidence. So going to use, if you use a systematic review rather than an individual study to base professional decision on, that is a recommendation, because they do have stronger recommendation compared to individual studies than as we looked at in the beginning. So systematic reviews and meta-analysis, they consider the highest available evidence. And that brings these kind of papers to a special place in the society, where, for example, they support evidence-based practice and clinical or professional decision making, as I illustrated just about, but it also support government decision and policies with evidence. Many or most, I will say, countries do have a research group that work with producing different type of systematic reviews and meta-analysis to support government and government decisions that has to be conducted. Politicians that need proper evidence to make decisions for the society and its people. And it also informs local, regional, and international guidelines. For example, in this pandemic, WHO has, of course, been crucial in giving public health and also giving recommendations for both the public and physicians in regards to how to handle the situation. For us, on how we should wear face masks, for example, when that is appropriate, and to clinicians to provide the latest guidelines of how to treat patients, how to handle this crisis. And all guidelines, all clinical recommendation, for example, on how to treat patients, always for World Health Organizations and other international and national and local medical bodies, for example, are always informed by a systematic review or meta-analysis. So the systematic reviews and meta-analysis have a direct important place in our society. I can give you an example from a historical example where in the 80s, I think, or even before, even before that, in the 1956, here is a book, Babies and Child Care, where there was a recommendation of having the children to sleep with their face down. And I think up to the 70s, 80s, these were the common recommendation in many countries worldwide. However, there were some individual studies that shows that this sleeping position could cause harm to the baby, and specifically connected it to sudden death and infant death syndrome. Several studies came in the 70s, there's one in the 80s, and in this systematic review that came in the mid-90s, no, it is actually in the mid-2000s, it was finally confirmed with an extensive systematic review of historical review of recommendations from 1940 to 2002 about baby sleep position, where they can conclude that there were tens of thousands of children who had directly, where the sleeping position could be concluded having a direct relation to their sudden infant death. So this was a very unlucky and very harmful recommendation that could be concluded to be changed with the help of a systematic review. So today the recommendation is to have the baby to sleep on the side or the back instead of with the face down. So that was a direct action based on this extensive systematic review. And as I mentioned now in COVID times, for example, we have this kind of systematic review that have informed us with, for example, here the effective and safety of hydroxychloroquine for COVID-19 prophylaxis. You maybe remember that there were a discussion back in a year ago, and so if we can eat this very famous malaria drug as a prophylaxis for COVID-19, and several systematic reviews could later on recommend us that this was not the case. There's no prophylaxis possibilities by eating hydroxychloroquine when it comes to COVID-19. Face mask, of course, there's several systematic reviews looking at face mask used, in this case in community, for reducing spread of COVID-19. So they have a great role to play when it comes to public health and protecting people during this pandemic, for example. So when we talk about systematic reviews, we have looked at that there is a difference between literature reviews and the more strict and free of bias systematic reviews. But within the group of systematic reviews, there are also different types of reviews. Systematic reviews with or without a meta-analysis is the most common form, but we also have rapid reviews, which should not be confused with like mini reviews and this kind of literature reviews that are done, that are small reviews over the literature. Rapid reviews in systematic sense is made based on a very strict reporting guideline as well. But they can be used, for example, when politicians need a very fast recommendation for a decision to take for the society. They can do a shorter, quick recommendation before the actual systematic review is out, if needed, if there's an urgency. Meta-analysis, we have already talked about that, and it's normally done together with a systematic review. And there's also something called network meta-analysis. We have also scoping review, umbrella review, and systematic review, and living systematic review. And scoping reviews and umbrella reviews, there are also specific reporting guidelines for that. Scoping review has its own checklist and guidelines to follow. Scoping reviews are a broader form of systematic review where, for example, you are unable to formulate a specific question needed for a systematic review. So you basically want to scope the area in order to find and report back how the research area, what's the status of the research area at the moment. That can also be used to identify a specific research area to conduct a systematic review. So it's a broader review form, includes more more papers to review, and but it does have these specific reporting guidelines and methods as well. Umbrella reviews are systematic reviews over systematic review. That's advanced stuff. They're not so common yet, but in areas that could actually be very helpful. If there's a lot of systematic reviews done, that can bring another level of summarizing the different systematic reviews in an umbrella review. But the latest one that's really new is living systematic reviews. And living systematic reviews are reviews that never stops to be updated. You know, well, you maybe put an end date of it, but it's a continuing updated review. So this has specifically increased in popularity during the COVID-19 pandemic, because of course the recommendation and the recommendation and also research we have connected to how to treat this specific patient, how to protect ourselves from this virus keeps changing as the research go on. So there was a discussion, for example, about hydroxychloroquine. It was actually used to treat patients in the early days of COVID-19, for only to later on be banned in some countries for treating COVID-19 patients, based on then research that was concluded in systematic reviews. So when we have a pandemic,
Linda, excuse me. Yeah, we have one question from Ali.
Please go ahead. Yes.
Yeah. He's asking, what is the most common type of systematic reviews?
It's systematic review, the one that is called simply systematic review, with or without meta-analysis.
Okay.
Yeah, and this is the one that I will show today and the reporting guidelines for. So absolutely the most common one is systematic reviews. But living systematic reviews has been more common or more popular, specifically with COVID-19, where there is a need for very frequent update. As you remember, a systematic review takes an average of 18 months to produce. So the material that is published are not fresh as per the latest month or week. It's not possible to do that. So living systematic review continues to update the recommendation based on updated searches and screening of the material. So this can be used in areas where there's a rapid change. It requires large resources and huge multidisciplinary teams. The living systematic reviews that published so far are conducted at institutions like, for example, Oxford University and such research intense and sourced universities. So it's a big undertaking. But we can see here, I have used the database Scopus as an example and search for living systematic review. And you can see that there is a sharp increase in 2019. Still, it's only like 71 published so far since 2010. So there's not so many, but there is definitely an increased interest in this type, an increased need for having constantly updated systematic reviews. But using Scopus again, is multidisciplinary database we have available through the library, and one of the major, largest multidisciplinary database that is available today. I did a search also on systematic reviews to see the development of the number of publications, systematic review published throughout the year. And I used 1990, as we know, mid-1990s was the real start of this kind of research up until 2021, the other day. And you can see that it's definitely, as we're speaking, this is, I think the most popular and highly developing research methodology. Looking to the left, we can see that in 2010, 2012, there were about 5,000 systematic reviews published. 2015, just a couple of years after, we had doubled, right? And today, so far in 2021, there are 28,000 systematic reviews published based on Scopus. So from 2012 to 2021, the number of systematic review published has increased from 5,000 to 28,000, and 21 has not even finished yet. So this is a very popular research methodology and publication type.
And we have one question from
Oh,
Nora.
of course, please go ahead.
Okay, she's asking, how may I know which type I'm reading and shall do?
Sorry, can you repeat? How will I know?
How may I know which type I'm reading and shall do?
Which type of systematic review or review?
I think, yes.
Yes, correct. So basically, it depends on your research question and your need. For example, if you have an area that is, we could go back to this area here, if we go back to this division here, if you have an area that is not so much published, but you still want to do a systematic, very evidence-based presentation of high standard of that area, you maybe go for scoping review. You maybe not be able to do such narrow research question. So if you're too narrow, you won't find any material, right? It's all depending on if there is things published in the area. So if you don't have so much publication in the area and still need to still want to publish something with a high level of evidence, a scoping review might be an option. And that is also a broader research question. While a systematic review will require you then to have a little bit more narrow focus. And as we saw then, the research question and title, that will also determine how you search. You have to create a search that match your research question. So if you have a very broad research question, you will have a lot of material. And that is not the focus for a systematic review. Then you will rather have a scoping review, right? Or you have to redefine your research topic. And if you are doing an umbrella review, well, then you only use systematic review, search for systematic review, and a rapid review. Normally that is not done so much by public. It's mostly institutions and governments that do rapid systematic review. So systematic review will be the most used and most common publication form, with or without a meta-analysis. But scoping review starts to also be quite popular. However, the level of evidence for a systematic review will be higher compared to a scoping review. Why many people use a systematic review instead of prefer a systematic review instead of a scoping review. If you add meta-analysis or not will depend on your research question as well. Do you have data and do you have possibility to get information, or does your research question, is that formulated in a way that you will have a lot of papers that present data that you can create, so you will have enough data to create new statistics based on your findings. Does that answer your question? So a bit about your topic, what is available, and what is your purpose with this study is determining what kind of review you do. All right, so a sharp increase and a current great interest for systematic reviews and meta-analysis, and not only in medicine. It has been medicine traditionally that have worked with systematic reviews and meta-analysis just to support patient care, right? So in the society, to be able to get the right treatment based on the latest research is of course of interest for all of us, but it's equally important, of course, in any part of the society to have professional and evidence-based decisions for our professional acts. Now, looking at Scopus again, Scopus is a multidisciplinary database, but the focus is more on science rather than humanities. But you can still see that we have systematic review published in other areas as well. Medicine stands for over 50% of the published systematic reviews in Scopus, but you can also see here psychology, nursing, definitely last 10 years there have been increased interest there, dentistry, social sciences, agriculture, and looking at other, you can also find business, art and humanities, chemical engineering, material sciences. I also know that law and IT are areas that increasingly published and produce systematic reviews. And to give you some examples, here is one. This is about what is stopping the automotive industry from going green. A systematic review of barriers to green innovation in the automotive industry. So this is from Journal of Cleaner Production. Sustainability, a journal where we have a systematic review, understanding stakeholders, attitude, needs and trends in accessible tourism, a systematic review of qualitative studies. Here is a study on, what is that? Exploring the trends of educational virtual reality games. And this is about trauma, violence, abuse, how to prevent violence among young people, which is something that could be valuable research, for example, for police, teachers, psychologists, anybody who is working with young people and people that maybe are included in violence. So there's many different areas that you can find systematic reviews published in. And so we can go directly to this, I think. So this is the structure of the systematic review process, where you see that we start with identifying the issue and determine the question, and we write a plan. This is a very important part of, and something that also differ systematic reviews from literature reviews or any other reviews, that it is a requirement to have a research plan for the project. We search for studies, we screen these studies, extract data from these studies, assess the quality of these studies. There are several tools where you use to look at the risk of bias and the quality of the papers that you have selected to determine if they are fully qualified when it comes to the risk of bias and quality of the papers to be included in your review. So you do that before you combine the data and do a systematic review or a meta-analysis. Then, of course, a discussion of the findings, etc., as in normal research. And as I mentioned,
Linda, we have one question.
Yes, please, go ahead.
I think you answered it at the beginning of the session. She's asking that some research or researchers write review. So how can we differentiate?
Write review. I'm not sure I understand the question. So some researchers write review.
Yes, I think she meant how to differentiate between literature review and a systematic review.
Yeah, correct. And what we're looking
or
at,
in title, as a title.
yeah, because some people write like a systematic review of the literature, but it maybe not be a systematic review. So systematic review is a very specific publication type. So many people kind of misuse systematic for their paper, but they do actually not follow the systematic review process. And the difference will be that in a systematic review publication, you will have to follow whatever topic or whatever you're doing, you have to follow these requirements. And I think when we go through some of the reporting guidelines, this will be more evident as well, what is required, because there's much more stricter methods to follow, both for the process, to document what you're going to do and how you're doing it, and how you report the end result compared to reviews in general, literature reviews, or these that we often see, say, a systematic review of the literature that is not actually a systematic review. In the high impact journals, they do have a clear definition of this, but as this is a new topic, it's not always the fact that everything that is called a systematic review actually are a systematic review. But I will show you some slides also showing the development and the increased requirement for making a change in this area. And we can see, we talked about the differences of different reviews, and time is also a factor. While a systematic review, as we've seen, do take 12 months or even more, up to 18 months is actually the average. So it takes long time, while a rapid review takes 5 weeks more. It's a very quick, just recommendation-based review. If you do an umbrella review, yeah, it's not so comprehensive as a systematic review, so it will take you around a year, and a meta-analysis will take longer time than a systematic review if you include that. So we're up to the 18 month plus. It's say 12 months plus here, but the latest research shows average of 18 months. Same with scoping review. Some people think that scoping review is easier because it's a broader topic, but in reality it takes longer time, because a broader topic will also generate more information. Because one of the differences with literature review and systematic reviews is that you have to produce a search string that generates a specific number of articles that match your need, and you have to look at, handle, select every single paper that you retrieve in that search. A literature reviews you can pick and choose, but in these kind of systematic reviews, everything you find in the databases or wherever you're searching needs to be handled and documented and screened through. And this requires a teamwork. I will show you the details of how this is screened and what reporting guidelines we use as a support. But as you can see then, based on the time required, that it takes at least a year, the average is 18 months. There's a lot of parts to consider. A systematic review is nothing that you do by yourself. You do need a team. And based on the basic risk of bias requirement, you do need at least 3 people as per defined guidelines. So the recommendation, yeah.
Okay, and we have 2 questions.
Yes, please go ahead.
I think the same question. How can we decide the type of review?
How can we decide the title?
I think, yeah, this is the question.
Yeah.
And what is the minimum articles used in the systematic review? And can you share the slides with the students at the end of the session? Yes. Sure.
Very, very good questions. And today we have limited time, right? And as you see, this is quite comprehensive research undertaking, so I won't be able to go through all the details. But as I will, of course, share the slides, and as one of the initial slide was showing, you can use the PICO or PICO method to identify. Have a look at that and do some reading on that if you're new to that, how to define your question. But it's back to basically what is published before. You want to publish something that hasn't been done before in order to get accepted in a journal. So to do some pre-search to see what is published before, I will show in the second session how that can be done. And as with any research, find your platform of what hasn't been published, what systematic review topic hasn't been found before. And the pre-search is also helpful to define the research question. I saw a couple of days ago, I saw a systematic review. They were looking at gaming in education, and they have just done a search on game and education, and they get millions It took them 8 years to go through them. And by the time they published, it's not really recent material that they are publishing. So they didn't end up in a really good research journal. So it's a balance between time and capacity, of course. How long, what is your timeline for this? If you have a broad research question, your work will go on forever because the search will match your question. If you can find and do work to find a really good limited question, a well-defined question, that will be easier. And you will also probably have a more attractive review to publish in the end. More systematic reviews are on very, very specific questions. There is a basic requirement that you need at least 2 papers to do a systematic review. And I think the systematic reviews I've been involved with have had search result everything from 4, that is very, very unusual. This was a super specific topic, but everything from 2 to 15,000. And if you have 15,000, you do need to have capacity to go through every single of these paper. Not read in full text, but go through the title and abstract as a start. So it's based on your time, but also what's the expectation, what do you want to publish, and what is available in that area. And that can be determined by doing a lot of searching to see, for example, what has been published, but also if I do a search matching my research question, how much will I get? If I get 120,000, well, I have to go back to the research question and maybe redefine that so I can be more specific in my need and get a more handleable and reasonable amount of papers. These are the things that librarians help out with, or information specialists. So in a research support team, or in a systematic review team, you work together with the subject specialist, clinician, or researcher with a lot of knowledge in this area, or a PhD student, or a student having special knowledge in a specific area. Librarians are involved together with statisticians, and these three competences are recommended to bring into a team by the reporting guidelines. And we will have a look at those just about. But back to this process then, each of these steps, what is different also from a literature review is that every step of what you're doing has to be documented and evaluated according to this specific reporting guidelines. So it's not just the quality of the paper you're including, but also the quality of how you are working, the process of conducting the systematic review. And that is to minimize the bias, not just with the included paper, but also the way the paper has been selected. So there are standardized reporting methods and guidelines. And it maybe feels overwhelming and heavy when I speak about it, but it's quite easy in the end. Well, it's not easy to do a systematic review, but the good thing compared to other research is that we know exactly what is required. We know exactly what has to be covered. We know exactly which part of the process and of the result that should be reported in the paper. So it's very, very clear guideline, and that helps with teamwork and also regards to planning of time of doing the reviews. And some of the most common guidelines are, as I mentioned before, this is not a guideline as per se, but a handbook, the Cochrane handbook. We also have QURUM, Quality of Reporting or Meta-Analysis, MOOS, which is a meta-analysis observational studies in epidemiology specifically. But we also have IOM, Institute of Medicine's Standard for Systematic Review, and the multidisciplinary and absolutely most commonly used and required PRISMA, the preferred reporting items for systematic reviews and meta-analysis. So PRISMA it is developed within, connected to health science and medicine, but it can definitely be used for other areas and adapted if needed to other areas than health sciences. And PRISMA, it is a list of 27 preferred reporting items for systematic reviews and meta-analysis. And it also includes a screening and selection flow diagram. This helps, tips and support, and also this PRISMA guidelines was just recently updated. It was published, I think, this year, but the version is called the PRISMA 2020 statement. So PRISMA is the most common used, and it's also a recommended or required guidelines to follow in high impact journals such as, here I have example from medicine though still, but the Lancet, I'm sure you heard about this even if you're not in the medical field, the Lancet, British Medical Journal, Annal of Internal Medicine, Journal of American Medical Association, and many more. They require or recommend PRISMA to be the standard for how things are reported. And one of the things that is included in the PRISMA is a flow diagram. A flow diagram basically documents exactly how you have searched, where you have searched, how many papers you have got in each source you have searched, and then it documents how you have deduplicated, how many you have screened, how many you have extracted, and also the reason for why you extract these papers. And in the end, then, how many you include in the systematic review and the meta-analysis. So this is an overview that is a requirement to be published together with the paper, showing the process of searching and selecting. So everything is transparent. How many paper did you get? How many of those were duplicates? How many were from PubMed? How many were from a gray source? Everything is detailed. Reported. In a literature review, this doesn't have to be included. You don't have to say where you search and how you search, but you can actually see in literature reviews that they use this PRISMA flow chart even for non-systematic review publications to give strength and be transparent in their selection. That will give the literature review a little bit more evidence, even if it's not a systematic review. So in the PRISMA reporting guidelines, this standardized flowchart is available, plus a checklist. And this is a checklist with the 27 items that I mentioned, and a description, for example, what am I supposed to cover in the methodology? What am I supposed to cover? What is the requirement for the abstract, etc. Everything, this is a 2 or 3 piece paper. I just show one here, but every single step, or you can even say every single headline in your paper is listed here as per a guide to what you have to require, what you have to include in your review, both for the process and when you're writing up the paper. And when the paper is ready, you also submit this checklist together with your manuscript. You can see to the right here, you see in which page these items has followed. So you basically go to your manuscript and say, okay, I'm reporting on, for example, data collection process on page 13, and I add that to the checklist so that the peer reviewer and editors very easy can go in and check the quality, and if the publication follow the required reporting guidelines. These kind of checklists are also available for example, you can see here we have for abstracts, for protocols, for scoping reviews. There are different type of checklists that you use when you work on your manuscript. So these are very helpful, but also required to follow the publication. But the absolute main important reporting guidelines, and something that you should put a lot of time in, and that is the first thing you do, is to create a protocol. This is back to many of the questions here on how to choose how to select inclusion exclusion criteria, how to define your research question, your title of the review. A protocol is the forum you work with before you start, where you go through every single detail over what you're going to do, what your process going to do to publish this paper. You write down, for example, how many will be included in the review. You write down the expected duration of the review. You write down which tools that you will use, for example, for screening, for extraction. Everything should be documented, presented, and also published. Sometimes there is a requirement to absolutely have it published before you start the review. It should be clear what you're doing, what's your research question before you start. Because remember, these kind of publications, their aim is, as per the definition, to minimize the bias. Therefore, you cannot change your research question in the middle of the process. If you find that something is not working, you basically have to start from the beginning with a new review. So to define the research question is very, very important, to make sure that the search, which should match the research question, doesn't give you too many or too few papers, to ensure that you have a team behind you doing this review, to ensure that you know which kind of risk of bias tool you're going to use, etc. Everything here should be determined and defined before you start. It's not accepted if you publish in a high impact journal, or it should not be, it is not accepted, it's not standard to change anything. It's like for you who are in the medical field or heard about, for example, clinical trials, randomized controlled trials, where you, for example, test a new medicine. You don't change the new medicine in the middle. You also have a protocol for that, and you follow that. You can't change and redecide things in the process. So very strict reporting guidelines. And it should be completed, registered, or published before you start. And the most common place to publish this study protocol is in Prospero. Prospero it's a free resource from the University of York, together with NHS, supported by NHS in UK, but it's an international resource where every systematic reviews that have anything to do with patients or the population health or animal studies are recommended or required to be registered. And you can see here in PRISMA that they recommend or to have a Prospero registration. And the Prospero registration provides a template for a protocol. So it's a very, very good. It's not easy to write a protocol and know what am I supposed to write down. But that is quite easy. Using Prospero, there is a template with drop-down menus and help text that shows you how to write down and what to report, so you match the reporting requirements. And it also provides an official registration number that some of journals require in order to get in peer review, that you will report in your paper when publishing. It will refer to your protocol to make sure. It will also give strength to your paper to show that, yes, I had a published protocol in place, and the protocol, what I said I was going to do, matched the final product. I think it was last summer, we published a paper, or we submitted a paper to British Medical Journal and referred to our protocol. It only was that our starting date didn't match the starting date that we had in Prospero. The protocol didn't match the starting date we wrote in our paper. It was just a couple of days. It was like not even a week difference, but British Medical Journal, which is a high impact journal, they said, sorry, no, you're not matching your protocol. The protocol and also even the starting date, when you say and anticipate you're going to start the review, should match what you write in your paper. So editor will go back to check your protocol to make sure that, yes, this paper actually builds on exactly what the protocol have lined out for the project. If there is a difference, you can be rejected. Because it is a very important part of the systematic review that you can present a protocol to show that you have you're clear with what you're going to do. You haven't picked and choose whatever you need during the process. You have a clear, structured process laid out for your review, and you have followed it. The Prospero registration cover protocols items for different standards like PRISMA and Cochrane. And here you can see examples here. This is, I just search on Pfizer in Prospero. This is how it looks like. And you can see that in the end, you can see I'm not sure if you see it, but you see a green dot. It's actually mice. So it's indicate that that is an animal study, and the other one is human studies. If you have a topic that is not connected to human health or animal studies, there are also other possibilities. Let's see, I have a slide here. Yes, there are also other possibilities. For example, to publish your protocol, make it published in a, you can actually do a journal publication. I will show you that in a bit. And there are also preprint servers. They do accept protocols. Here I have, for example, an example, PsychArchive, a preprint server where you can make your protocol published. Research platforms, networks, these are also places where you can publish a protocol to make it official and published if you do not work in the area of medicine and health.
Ms. Linda, we have two questions.
Yep.
One from Ali, I think he's asking regarding Prospero, that it is similar to the clinical trials. There's website, clinical trials.
Yeah.
But this is for systematic reviews, and this is and the other is for clinical trials.
Yes, great, Ali. Yeah, exactly. So clinical trials, you know, if you do clinical trial on involving patients, it's very restricted. You have to register that and get it approved before you start, right? You don't need an approval to start a systematic review, but you do need a protocol lining out the process exactly like with, but different reporting items as with a clinical trial, definitely. So Prospero, yes, it's kind of clinical trials. Yeah, and there is an peer review of the things that are published in protocol in Prospero, and you can definitely be rejected if the protocol does not, or protocol registration does not keep the standard that is needed. And again, the journals where you submit for peer review, they will go to the protocol you have published to make sure that you have followed the plan for the systematic review all way. And it's all about making sure you have no bias included and that the systematic review has been done with high quality. So yeah, it's a good comparison, definitely.
There is another question. Yeah. That shall we stick to any of the protocols, like we have to follow PRISMA or others, or yes, that we can use guidelines, specific guidelines, and we can suggest our own protocol?
Yeah, so it's always better if you find one that is specific. So if you go to if you have some intended journals that you would like to publish in, you can go to their website and see what they recommend. Within health science related or psychology, nursing, dentist, you will find that PRISMA will be the one, right? And in many journals, as this is, you see, this is very, very new. So in some journals, they don't even have any recommendations or referral to how the, what kind of protocol or how the systematic review should be divided. So in that case, I wouldn't suggest to do your own, but you can use, I would say, use PRISMA and adapt it to fit specific criteria you need to have included. If you're in health science and medicine, do not adopt it. If you're outside, use PRISMA, adapt it, and be very, very clear with and transparent with what you have changed and adapted. So you can write that you have used PRISMA and adapted to 1, 2, 3 based on the need for reporting on a certain part that is more connected and adapted to your field. If that, I think that, does that answer your question?
Yes, yes.
So in many areas like education, there is a discussion going on right now that there is a need to work on or to implement more evidence-based practice within education and educational research. So I do think that we will see more study protocol and checklist requirements for other fields as well. But so far, what we're working with is from, yeah, as you see in the historical connection with medicine. Something that has become very popular past year or two is also to actually make a publication of your protocol. Right? You can see that with clinical trials and other method paper as well, that sometimes you expand on the protocol. You can have a Prospero protocol and expand it to be a full publication. It is the same thing as a Prospero template protocol, but you add an abstract, you add an not a conclusion, but you add an abstract and you add an introduction to your paper and publish it as a, in this case, you can see this is a diabetes-related symptoms, a protocol for systematic reviews. Yeah. So in your publication later on, you refer to your Prospero registration on and to your published review. And this will, of course, help you to be more visible with your project, what you're working on. To register the protocol is definitely about quality, and to publish it as well, but it's also for visibility. I have been in several, well, I worked as a librarian for over 20 years, so I've had several examples of how researchers worked long time with a project and just finishing up, somebody else publishing on the exact same topic in high impact journals, and they have to redefine or publish in a lower impact journal to get accepted. And this is not fun because you put a lot of time into your research. So the purpose of publishing a protocol in a journal or of course registering your protocol is also about creating visibility for what you're doing, what is coming up, but also mark your space and keep off. This is my topic. I'm doing this. Try something else, right? So there is not a redundant and also a waste of within the research space for systematic reviews. So more visibility if you also publish a protocol in addition to registering it. To give you some examples, we have talked about that there is detailed reporting requirement, and this is it's from one of the paper that I've been I'm co-authoring a systematic review published in what is this one? Yes, I think it's it's published in Sleep Medicine Reviews, and you can see here that we have described exactly how we have screened and select the papers. We write which software we use, we write who has screened, how many's been involved, how we have handled the process, and so on. But not only that, in a systematic review, you're also very specific on who has done what. Fully transparent regards to connected to bias and also be transparent in the entire process. So you can see here that the Covidence software will be used to detect and exclude any deduplications, which will be managed by LÖ, which is me. And then 2 reviewers independently reviews the title and abstract. This is IG and AA, etc., which are the other 2 of the other researchers. So in a systematic review, you're describing in detail what you are doing, who is doing it, and also highlight that that has been done independently and blinded. They have not sit together to go through these papers. They have worked independently in a specific software. So this is also a difference to any other, I think almost any other publication type. Systematic reviews are the one that is most details of describing the exact process of how things has been, in this case, screened and selected. And as we saw before, the screening and selection is written up in the method of the paper, but also appended, the detail and the figures for that is appended as a required reporting item to the paper. It can be published within the paper as well, but most of the time you find this as an appendix. Same with searching here. Don't have to read through the entire thing. I will happy to share the slides. But as an example, you can see here that in the method of the paper, we describe that we have conducted a comprehensive search in 7 electronic databases. We say which databases, we say who did this search, in which time periods, which filters we use, how the keywords were placed in which fields, etc., etc. So every detail over how we search, where we search, who has been searching is also reported, because everything in the systematic review should be transparent, reported. There should not be any questions of how have things been done and selected and who have done it. And everything should also be able to reproduce. We need to be able to appraise these papers properly to make sure that the process has been conducted in a high quality way, and that the selection of and inclusion of papers are actually the best available evidence papers that is available in that for that specific topic. So for the searching, as a second example here, we also have an appendix showing exactly the search details of each databases. When we search, what it's covering. I have details right up here, for example, with different applications of the mesh terms, for example, in which fields I searched, how many papers we received in each database. Because in this case, we have 1,501 papers in PubMed. There will be 6 other databases, and every single paper we find, we have to look at. And when we look at those, it follows this flow that you first look at all the titles and abstracts. In this case, we had a total of 5,078 records identified, or 70 maybe it is. After deduplication, it's 2,361. So it's quite middle small, or like quite small systematic review. And all these 2,000 papers will have to be screened in title and abstract first. You only look at title and abstract to start with. And they will then later on be the one that we potentially would like to look at in full text, will be screened in full text for a final selection of including in the study. And I get a question in the beginning about how much papers to include. Again, it depends on the search specification, but in general, if you find, in this case, we have 2,361 papers, the normal range of those papers being relevant to include is about 2 to 5%. So if you have 2,000 papers, it will only be in then 2 to 5% of those that are selected to do a systematic the analysis of. So that is a normal range. But if you have a very broad question, again, it will be more papers that will be matching your pre-specified inclusion-exclusion criteria. So as you see, this is very specific and laid out reporting methods. And there is a close connection between the method and search documentation and the quality of an overall risk of bias of systematic reviews. And when it comes to search, for specifically, the poor search documentation and lack of method transparency reduce the usefulness of systematic reviews in evidence-based and clinical settings. If you cannot if you cannot analyze and reproduce the evidence that is presented, if we, for example, connect back to our current situation in the pandemic, it is very important that the papers, even the systematic reviews, can be critically appraised, analyzed, to make sure that life-saving or situations where the life is on stake, that the clinical decision taking based on the research is the correct one to do. So everything is very transparent and 100% reproducible. So to help us in this process, I know this is this will just be an overview and give you an idea of the requirement for systematic reviews and meta-analysis, but the steps, as we saw in the beginning, do include a lot of more other requirements. But I think with this overview, we'll have an idea over the requirements with examples from, for example, screening and searching, that everything will take time and everything has to be so specific reported. What you do and the result, both of these. And to help us surviving these processes, there are several systematic review tools that are specifically designed to handle these the different parts of the review process. Many of them are adapted to PRISMA or Cochrane, for example, because you can do a Cochrane review as well. There is something called Cochrane review following that guidelines. And some examples of systematic review tools are, for example, EPI, which is used in social science and education. As I mentioned before, these are two areas which are, together with medicine, really working a lot with systematic reviews and increasing in number of systematic reviews. Covidence, which I will show here today, is a very user-friendly and easy to use systematic review tool. We have a subscription at UAU. We also have Distiller. It's a little bit more comprehensive and time consuming out of my perspective and experience working with different teams, software to use. Ryan, some people use that. That's a free software. It's not as comprehensive, of course, as the subscribed version, such as, for example, Covidence. And there's something called SysRev, but these are not anything we have subscribed to. So Ryan is the most common used free software, and Covidence is the review software that we are subscribing to at UAU. And this is Covidence. And you can see here on the screen that it does have four modules that go through the entire structure of the systematic review process. There is an importing module that is not showing here. Then there is a title and abstract screening. Then there is a full text screening, and then there's extraction. These are the stages of screening through and selecting papers to be included in the review. And this software is fully prepared to blinded screening, and using this software, it will guarantee you to be able to report on that you and the team who has screened are doing this independently and with minimized bias. So if you sign up for the UAU subscription to Covidence, which I will show you where you can find, you can also include and invite people from all over the world to participate in your research. If you're working with a research partner in India or US, you can send an invitation to your research review in Covidence through our subscription, and they can get full access. They will not be able to create their own reviews because this is a resource paid by UAU, but they can participate in the review that you have set up within the institution. It is fully PRISMA integrated. So if you're using PRISMA, for example, you will get help to create a PRISMA flow chart automatically. Whatever you do in the screening will be recorded in a nice PRISMA flow chart. And it's also mobile friendly. So if you're screening title and abstract, for example, which is it's quite a lot to screen. You have to go through every paper, but it's quite quicker than watching, reading all the full text. That can be done by your mobile phone as well. Here you can see again that this is how it looks like. It's super, super easy. You have the import, title and abstract, full text, and extraction as required for process requirement for the review. You start with screening everything into a title and abstract and say yes, no, and maybe if they could be valuable for the review, matching your inclusion, exclusion criteria and research question, and they need to be screened on full text to do the final decision. And there's also an extraction module helping you extracting data for summarizing the findings in the different review. And here you can see on the top, you can see also the PRISMA integration, where a flow chart will be generated as you screen. Looks like this, very easy. You will have your title and also abstract. I don't have an abstract shown here. And no, maybe, and yes function. It is fully blinded. You will not see what the other people do. And in the end, a third reviewer, here we come back to the need of having at least 3 people included. The minimum requirement for this screening process is that at least 2 reviewers independently screen every title and abstract, and 1 reviewer resolve the conflicts. Any disagreement between these reviewers should blindly be screened by a third reviewer, and the software will take care of these blinding and present the person who is resolving the conflicts with a list for him or her to take care of in the end of that. This is the extraction module. I know we have reached the end of the session. I think I have two slides more, but this is extraction module, very easy, where you can extract, you can build your extraction sheet of what you'd like to extract for your review from the papers. And there's a dual screen showing the actual papers. You can copy and paste from the paper. Like, for example, if you pay journal name or these basic things, you can copy them over very easily. So you don't have to work. For you who have worked with systematic review and used Excel sheets, these are so much easier because you have everything in one place, and a copy and paste function from the papers directly to your extraction module, and which you can export to an Excel sheet in the end. So Covidence you find under both the main library and Natural Medical Library under Tools and Guides. You see there Covidence, and you simply sign up by requesting access through your UAU email and login credentials. You can read more also about Covidence and other parts and different support that we provide from the library in regards to systematic review processes in one-on-one support, or today we're doing a workshop, but also technical support and recommendation for different software that can be used, and reporting guidelines that match your specific research question. You find that page on the NML site. Now, I know we have reached the end of the time for this first session, but if we have any other additional questions, I welcome them as well. So please, I will leave the floor open if somebody would like to ask any questions. Maybe we can unmute all the participants. Will that be possible? Any questions?
I think we don't. Okay, we have one.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Dr. Linda, you just mentioned in one of your slides talking about there is template for protocol. So could you just tell us from where can I find this on PRISMA website, please?
Yes, absolutely. So the PRISMA website does not give a template, but on the PRISMA you will have the, let me see here, we will have the checklists, which shows the detail of what we're supposed to publish, what we're supposed to report. And there is a PRISMA checklist for protocols. So that's a good start to look at what are the elements I need to report to be able to create a protocol. But in Prospero, which is the international register for ongoing systematic reviews, there we can find the template. I'll see if I have a template here. No, here I have a registration here where we can see that there are different headlines, and in the actual template there will be also explanation to these different headlines with the expectation of what is supposed to be written up under each of these headlines. So PRISMA have a checklist for protocols, while Prospero have a template.
Thank you. I would just like to ask whether we can use Covidence just for data extraction, or it will help us for analyzing the data as well, the finding.
Yes. So Covidence is supporting to import every paper you found in the different databases. It also supports the title and abstract screening. It supports the full text screening, where you have the full text, you can upload them directly, and extraction, but it doesn't do any analysis, and you cannot do like forest plots or anything. It's basically the process of selecting and extracting information that can be done in Covidence. Very good export functions though, where you can export over to, for example, RevMan or other analyzing statistical tools, or export all the references or the extraction sheet. But the analysis will be done based on the conclusion and the extraction details that you can produce in Covidence. But the analysis itself happens outside Covidence.
But how can this be blind? So if I extract the data from database and decide whether it would fit my study or not, how can you consider this blind?
Yeah, so basically we're back to the team again for systematic review. So for me, for example, as a librarian, I'm the one who conducts the search. I put together and build a search strategy based on the protocol strictly, and also work with the researcher to make sure that I have a good search term inclusion based on their special knowledge of the field. Then I'm the one conducting the search for the process, but I'm not included in the selection and the screening. So when I done the search, I upload it here, and then there are separate people that independently do the selection. And we have, of course, then set up exactly what we want to include. What are inclusion and what are exclusion? Do we, for example, only want to have people that have had a stroke and have a follow-up after 2 years? That is our inclusion. Okay, so then we only include in that type of study. So the specification of inclusion exclusion criteria will guide the screeners independently. There is a setting in Covidence where every person have their own space to screen, and you cannot see what other has done. And the next step, for example, if you're in title and abstract, you will not be able to go to the next step, full text, until every title and abstract is screened and the conflicts are resolved for that. So that is how Covidence is supporting the blinding of the selection. That does answer your question?
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you. Because if you work with a spreadsheet, you cannot really, it will give you a better possibility to report in your paper that there has been a blinded screening that was set up with these settings, where person 1 and 2 and 3 did title and abstract, and person 5 and 6 did full text, for example. So back to describing how you have done, this will also reduce the bias by being specific of who did what, in what software, and that is what's blinded. Yes, good questions. Any other questions? No? All right. Shall we then make...
Yes.
Yeah,
I think we don't have any other question. So now we'll have 20 minutes break.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and the next part of the session will start at 1, inshallah.
Inshallah. And then we will look at the searching part. We will go to look at systematic searches, and I will show some practical examples on how to build a systematic search to make a really good literature selection for your systematic reviews.
Okay, but
All
I
right.
think we have one question from Sumaya.
Oh, yes, please go ahead. I'm here. Yeah.
Okay, Sumaya, can you turn on your mic? All right. Okay.
Hi, Sumaya. We cannot hear you, unfortunately.
Okay, you don't have mic. Okay, just write down your question. Okay, we will let Sumaya to write her question.
Yeah,
I
have a question.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, go ahead.
Hi, Linda, again. It's me, Aijan.
Hi, Aisha.
How are you? Thank you so much for this amazing presentation. But my Wi-Fi was today unstable, so I just, I think I skipped a couple of things, but I just saw that on Covidence on your last page or slide,
Yeah.
You showed PRISMA, something it was mentioned. Did you mention, what is that function?
The PRISMA function, yeah. So, yes. So basically, PRISMA is one of the reporting guidelines. And one part of that guidelines is that we are expected to present this PRISMA flowchart. That is one of the reporting items required when we report on a systematic review in journals that is requiring PRISMA guidelines. And in Covidence, the screening process and deduplication process and an important process of papers will automatically be populated in this kind of PRISMA flowchart. So you don't have to build that yourself. There's a ready-made PRISMA flowchart that will be updated throughout the screening process in the software.
Wow, okay. Great, thank you so much. That's what I wanted to make sure.
Yeah, and even
Lovely.
if you don't use PRISMA, the full report of how much you have found, how you have screened it, how you've excluded it, will be available in this function that you can use for any other format of reporting a flowchart.
Nice. Okay, great. And we can retrieve it from that, right? As a flowchart. Okay.
Yeah. Yes, it looks a little bit more simple than what I have here. So I normally take the information from that PRISMA flowchart in Covidence, and I adapt it to a little bit more details that is from the template of the PRISMA flowchart on their website instead, to be a little bit more specific. But the basics are there. Yeah.
Right. Okay, great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Let me see some.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. Can you see the question?
Let me open the chat here as well. Let's see, we have a chat here. Now one more message. Yes, can the reviewer screen the title and abstract independently, not to continue each other's work? Like, for example, I reach article 4 and the other reviewer can start from. No, so basically, every reviewer who is included should, as per the reporting guideline, screen every single paper. So you cannot, if you have, I had a review we worked with recently, it was 800 full text papers, not title and abstract. After title and abstract, they had 800 full text paper to screen. This is exceptional. And we had 3 reviewers and all the reviewers had to screen and read the 800 papers. We cannot split, because this is again the basic requirement that you need at least 2 independent screeners to screen every single paper. So it seems tempting to kind of divide the work, but that will decrease or increase the risk of bias. So the standard reporting and the standard setting in Covidence and as per reporting guidelines is that at least 2 screeners independently screen all the included papers. So unfortunately, dividing work is not recommended. I hope that was the answer of your question, I hope, Sumaya. So again, then it's about, yeah, thank you. Very good question. And again, we're back to the research question, inclusion, exclusion criteria, doing pre-searches to make sure that you not end up with 5,000 paper to screen, you know. And it's not the reason why systematic reviews are have very specific research question, but it's part of it. It's supposed to be on a limited or a specific research area that because everything in the review is, every paper has to be screened. Yes, thank you. Any more questions?
We can't see any other questions. So if there is no questions, we can take a break, no?
Yeah, let's take a break. Can I adopt these methods for literature review? Okay, I'm here so I can continue answering. We are on break. We'll start again with the next session at 1 it is, right? But yes, I'm here to answer questions. We can adopt these methods, but and we do see an increased use, for example, of the PRISMA flowchart presented in literature reviews and also in student thesis. Like I'm working right now. I'm the co-author of a research method book in back home in Sweden and Scandinavia that is for health science and medicine students about different type of literature based thesis. And the student back in Sweden, they often use a PRISMA flow diagram for their different type of literature literature-based thesis. So definitely, it will strengthen the evidence and the quality of the review to report on the flow diagram, for example, in a review. But if you're doing the full everything in the systematic review, you will end up having a systematic review basically instead of a literature review. But formulating how you have search, where you have search and the result, and support that with the flow diagram is increasingly used also in literature reviews. Very good question. Thank you so much. Any other questions? No? All right. I will take a short break here as well, and I'll see you all back in a couple of minutes where we're going to look at the search methods for systematic reviews. Thank you so much. Lovely, great questions. I appreciate that. And see you back in a couple of minutes. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Linda, and see you all, inshallah, after 10 minutes.
Inshallah. Shukran.
Thank you.
Shall we perhaps wait a couple of minutes more? We can wait, yeah, some more minutes before we start, I think.
Yes, I think it's better because
yeah,
we'll have some students didn't complete.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Okay.
That's good. We have very thankful for so many good questions the previous session. All right. Yes, of course. I have a question here that a copy of the presentation I'm happy to share, of course, no problem. And I also have my email and contact information included, so you're welcome to contact me if you have any questions after the session, or if you start to work on a systematic review and need some support or have questions. So of course, I will share. Okay, shall we perhaps, shall we go ahead and start?
I think yes, we can start because we have 30 students, so it's good.
Yes,
Yes.
we will do so. All right, I will stop this. Okay, so that is great. So we'll start with the second part, and I would like to welcome you who have joined us for this second part of the presentation. If you were not here in the morning, I'm Linda Oslund, Director for the Natural Medical Library, and I also are actively involved in co-authoring and supporting specifically systematic review and meta-analysis, but also, of course, other type of research. But today the focus is on systematic reviews. And in the session before, we looked at method requirements and definition of what is a systematic review, what's the difference by conducting a systematic review as a publication type compared to literature reviews, etc. And in this second session, we will look at search methods and techniques for systematic literature searching in electronic databases. We are online, so we can unfortunately not have so much hands-on practice. We will have some. I will ask you to be a little bit active during this session, and we will together do some activities in the practical part of this session. It does, however, take some practice and self-practice and testing to get hold of the techniques presented today and practice how to do a systematic search. But of course, I'm available and my colleagues are available in the library for advice and help in this regard. And I will share my PowerPoints for your support as well. But today we're going to go through some of the major or the main search techniques that is useful to be aware of and have an idea of how they can have an impact on and change your search result. We're also going to look at selecting information sources. What do we include? We talked about peer review information, but what type of information sources, databases, etc., can we use to find this kind of information? How much is expected to be covered, etc. The search process, search strategies with a focus on search terms, basic search techniques. Some of these are maybe familiar for you already: truncation, phrasing, Boolean operators, field search, and search history. I think I have mesh included as well. And even if they are familiar for you, we will do some have some examples to show what exactly are the impact of paying attention to and fully using these search techniques on a systematic search. Peer reviewing the search strategy, because of course the detail of the search strategy and how we perform the search will have a direct impact on the quality and the end result of a systematic review or a meta-analysis. Some live demos and practices as well. And as in the previous session, please do raise your hand or use a chat for any question while I am presenting. I really appreciate your input and your questions in the last session. I think we have, even if we went over a couple of minutes, I think we will have time for integrating the question while we're proceeding with the presentation for this session as well. So the systematic search process is basically these 4 elements, where we start with pre-search to test and determine the search terms, the search strategies, resources, to make sure that we have created a search that match the need for the research question, that it covers the inclusion criteria, what we need to be able to get information matching our need. The second part, when we have tested different variations and search terms and techniques, is to develop and test the final search string. And I suggest to do this in one database. Everything, as we have seen in the process of this kind of research, is very structured. You do not jump from step 1 to step 5 only to go back to step 4 and add a little bit extra, change like you do in a literature review. This is not happening. You follow the set process you have developed in your protocol. So when you finalize the pre-search, you develop a specific search string using one database, and then you translate that search string to all databases. The search should be performed equally and in as similar as possible in each database or source included, so you can have a comparable result. You do not search in one way in one database and change a little bit for the other. If you do any changes, that should be documented as a part of the reporting on the search. Peer reviewing, document and update the search. Every single search term, inclusion and technique use and results should be transparently available together with the paper, and you have a possibility to use some tools to peer review the search string to make sure that you didn't miss anything or have made any mistakes. I will give you some examples of how that can be done and tools for that. So starting with the pre-search, that actually can take more time than the actual search, because this is when you use the pre-search to help you finalize the research question, to understand also what is available, what materials will be available approximately for you to use for your review. It doesn't have to be so structured. You can use Google Scholar, library discovery tool, databases, journals, wherever you need to support your formulating of the research question and start to work on the systematic search. So looking around, analyzing, checking different sources, allowing yourself to be experimental and until you have a conclude search. You have the library's discovery tool available on both Natural Medical Library and the main library, which is like the Google tool for the entire library, including all papers, all articles, all journals, all books, everything in the library collection. So that could be instead of going to Google, which is very broad and a lot of commercial things, you can go to the library collection to see what is available on your suggested topic through the library.
But it's also, we have one question.
Yes, please.
From Zaid. What is the allowable or advisable period between the search within the different DPs?
Can you repeat? What is, I didn't hear fully, what is
the allowable or advisable period between the search within the different DBs?
Yes, I'm sorry, you're breaking out. What is available and?
What is the allowable or advisable period between the search within the different DPs?
It's a period you're saying, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Very good question. And I would say that you develop your search string and test it. And when you do the search in all databases, I would advise to do that with as little time between as possible. So you basically take a week or whatever is needed to sit down and do. You can't do them all in one day if you don't have a very, very limited search. But normally that the search and uploading can take several weeks. So I would suggest that you set off at least a week to very systematic, close your office door or your office door at home and go through database by database, one at a time, very structured. Do not keep gap between. It won't look good when you're reporting, because you're reporting exactly when you have searched. And there will be question, if you search one database in May and one in June and one in August, there will definitely be questions by the peer review team. We want a similar result. So it's also advisable based on, what shall we say, it's also more handy to do it, because when you search, you will have to remember how you have conducted the search from database to database. You maybe even do some changes and update the entire search. And these kind of details of what you're doing and the techniques you're applying, it's easier to remember that and be consistent if you do the search in all database during a time period, for example, a couple of days or a week. So it's more easy for you and it looks much better, and you don't risk to get any comments on why you have spread the search out. So it's simpler to do, just set up some time and do it in the same time. Very good question, very good question. But before we reach to that stage where we do the actual search in all databases, it is also good to check if anybody else have published anything on your topic. So you're not starting this big project on a topic that is already published or going on. And what we can do to do that is, of course, let me see what is my next slide here. Oh, I think I missed one slide. I'm sorry for that. So I didn't have that. I'm sorry. I intended to have a slide here showing again Prospero, where in Prospero you can go and find published reviews that are not published yet, ongoing reviews, and you can go for looking at the database to see reviews that, for example, is already published. Here I have PubMed, for example, where I have done a search on systematic review and meta-analysis in title that I can combine with any topic that I'm searching on and find a list of reviews that are published already on my topic. So that is very important, even before starting to define, and together with defining your topic, has anybody published or has anybody registered a review on this topic? How can I be different? What can I reformulate my question or my focus, my inclusion, to create something that is different compared to what's already done? In systematic reviews, as I mentioned in the beginning of the first session, mainly include published high-quality peer-reviewed studies that is found through academic database search. There could also be inclusion of gray sources. That is, for example, trial register, conference materials, reports. Like we mentioned, the WHO have recommendations, clinical, but it is done, but it depends on the topic. But the main part of the papers that is analyzed in the systematic reviews are from published peer reviews, high impact studies. We do also sometimes do some hand screening, depending on the topic again, of the included studies. And you can also ask experts in the field if they know any additional reports or publications that could be useful for your topic. Now, the systematic search should cover everything that is available, and specifically if you're looking at published papers. But this is like an old what should we say, procedure that you do to just demonstrate that nothing has been missed. But it's important that that part is also documented clearly. Who has done it? Is it done blindly? And how much was screened and how much was found? How many was recommended by which expert, etc. Again, full transparency. Electronic databases, then there's of course many different databases that could be of interest for a systematic search. And looking at the different disciplines in medicine, we have Medline, PubMed, Embase, of course. And for any discipline, we have multidisciplinary academic databases, Scopus, Web of Science, Science Direct, Academic Search Complete, ProQuest. They're all multidisciplinary database, can be used in any topic. Social sciences, PsycInfo for psychology, psychiatry, ERIC, education. In food and agriculture, we have also, for example, Agricola and FSTA, and we have Business Source Complete for business, IEEE for engineering, JSTOR, Project Muse for humanity. So it depends on what topic you're searching. It can be, however, that if you're in humanities, you maybe publish something about bibliotherapy, how to use books in connection to treating patients or in therapy sessions, which brings you to also use, for example, PsycInfo or Medline. So depending on the topic, you maybe not even stick to databases within that specific subject. It can be relevant to mix within other subject areas as well to get a good result. Now, what about using Google Scholar then for systematic reviews? What do you say? I will go back to my databases. So what about, based on what we have gone through so far today, how would Google Scholar fit in here? Would that be a good source to add? Anybody have any idea or?
Well, maybe Google Scholar is like starting point to just determine where you should go. Then
sorry, I cannot hear you so well. Can you talk closer to the mic, please?
Yeah, I think Google Scholar is the starting point where you just need to know the overall orientation of your search later. But whenever you need to just dig deeper and find the quality papers, you need to depend on the research databases.
Yeah, correct. I mean, Google Scholar is a super good tool to find scholarly information, and it's good for pre and post search screening, as you're saying, but it does lack proper search tools required for a systematic review. It doesn't have the advanced search options that is needed to be able to ensure that you have done a good search that is required. And also it will generate too many results. Based on that, it doesn't have any search tools as it is in academic databases and other things. So you will have a lot to screen. I don't know, have anybody done a search in Google Scholar and not getting thousands of results? So basically, even if you have a very narrow research question and search question, you will have a lot of papers, many irrelevant. It's a broad search function in Google Scholar. And going back to the requirement for systematic reviews, every single paper you find need to be screened and reported. In full text level, you even have to say why you excluded them. So if you include Google Scholar, it's basically too much. You can't. It's impossible to include all this. It will not be a good. It will take longer time. Your research will be old when you publish it. So plus if you do a really good search in the databases, definitely anything that will be relevant that could be covered in Google Scholar, you will find it in the databases. Google Scholar does not have a lot more extra to offer. Yeah, it looks a lot because there's a lot of results. But when it comes to high impact peer-reviewed materials, if you don't find it in the database, it's probably not high impact peer-reviewed materials. Google Scholar also have a lot of fake journals, predatory journals, things that are saying it's peer-reviewed, but in reality it's not peer-reviewed. And to avoid getting these kind of low quality papers in your research, Google Scholar should only be used for in the pre-search phase, as you were mentioning. Very good. So the databases are, of course, not then something you can find freely online. Some databases you can search online without logging in, like PubMed, for example, and ERIC. But to get access to all features and to all papers available, you will need to be connected to the library. So whenever you are searching, always go through the library website, go to the database you're interested in, and log in, verifying your affiliation to the university with your UEE login and password, login credential and password. That will give you access to all the databases of academic standard through the library. So how many sources do we include then? Well, I get this question a lot, and I get, when working with doctors, they also say, well, isn't it enough only with PubMed or Medline, which is a main source for medicine? Isn't it enough to just use the main source? Wouldn't that cover everything? And it would be easy if that were the case, but it's not that easy. You should include, we'll say, I mean, there's not a specific number, but if you only have 2 resources, I wouldn't consider it to be a good source inclusion. If you have 3 to 5 would be considered okay, you know. So between 3, 4, 5, 6, that is a normal inclusion. But it also depends on your subject. If you have a subject where there's very little published, it's better to have more databases. And if it's a very common subject or focus for your research, maybe it's enough with 3, 4 databases, depending on the topic as well and the databases available. I did a little quick research on this. I presented in a conference some years ago, comparing 5 of my systematic reviews that I have been involved with, looking at very roughly then how many, how it's not roughly in that point that the search is roughly or the figures are correct, but there are different number of included databases in these search. Some of these papers have 3 databases included, some have 6, but it gives us an idea of the differences and impact of including more sources. So in these 5 reviews, you can see the title of on the top. I used PubMed as the one of the resource, and you can see that I get 4,900 in one, I get 1,400. So it's different range of results in PubMed depending on the research topic. And then I added from 3 to 6 extra databases. All of them have 4 or more databases included, and calculated based on the number of extra resources identified after deduplication, and found that adding more databases compared to PubMed, which is a key database in its field, can give you up to almost 70% extra relevant papers. So it is, of course, good to start with a key source in your field. If you're in education, it will be ERIC. If you're in psychology, it will be PsycInfo, and medicine, it will be PubMed. But remember to add and remember to check and evaluate as part of the pre-search, how much should I add? What will be relevant depending on what I need? How many resources should I add? You should not end up with 10, 11, because it will be too much. You have to set the limit somewhere, but 3 to 6, as I have here, or that will be 4 to 7, is quite a normal range of inclusion. And remember this, that yes, it can make a difference. You see, none of them have lesser than 17.3, but that's a very narrow result. But none of them have lesser than 17% extra, adding other databases. But again, do check in the pre-search what will be relevant for your research question to include, but it will make a difference. And going back to the definition, the main thing for the systematic review compared to literature reviews, again, is to collect all empirical evidence. We aim to find everything that is published matching our preset inclusion-exclusion criteria defining the research question. Everything that is published. Of course, not 100% possible to find everything published, but as much as it's possible. And the foundation for any systematic reviews is a comprehensive systematic search with the aim of exhausting all available studies matching the research question. And the search can look very differently. The main, let me see here. Yes, the main focus will be that, yeah, it needs high quality, of course. The search will have to be systematically developed and have a high quality output. And that requires time. It's nothing that is done in a couple of weeks or even a month. It takes long time to develop a systematic search. It also requires advanced skills in information retrieval, search techniques and information resources, knowledge about subject terms and thesauruses, mesh and indexing, detailed search term inclusion and testing, and analysis of search process. And these are, of course, knowledge and skills that you can develop over time working with this kind of research questions. Cochrane Handbook, I think you remember that. I mentioned that a couple of times, and it's one of the main handbooks and guidelines for this type of research. They have made a timeline. It's only built on 12 months plus. So we remember it's 18 months on average for a systematic review, but they have made a timeline defining the time it takes for the different parts of the process. And we can see here that in this 12-year period, Cochrane Handbook say that the search will take in this process will be conducted between month 3 to 8. So there's many months. Only in a 12-year period, you have several months. You have up to 5 months only for the search. And I think that's important to remember, because if you do not do good solid search, the entire process will be affected. The end product will be affected. So the search must take some time to be tested, to be developed in every single detail. And that's one of the big differences from a literature review, where you just look around everywhere to see what you can find that is interesting. But here you have to do a very comprehensive and detailed developed search that takes many months to put together. Even for me, who has worked 20 years plus with advanced searching and last almost 10 years with systematic reviews, there's no way I can put together a search string in some weeks. No way. I think with the easiest one, maybe 1.5 months, if I work intensively over several days or over several hours every day, but it will take time. It has to take time, because as you've seen before, it's a direct correlation between the quality of the search and how you report it and the risk of bias and quality of the review itself. So what is taking time? Well, of course, it's different time depending on different topic. Here is a review that I'm working on. It's available in protocol right now, and it's submitted for peer review, but it's on PCOs and pharmacological interventions. I had to really minimize this. This is a very comprehensive search, and putting it on an A4, it goes over in a normal like 12 or 10 style, it will go over like 3 A4 pages. It's a huge search. It took me over a year to develop that. Not all searches are like that. There can also be shorter searches, like this one, which took some months to do, because it's a much more specific research question, and there is not so much published in the area and not so many search terms to consider connected to this research question. So you can see everything from this and even more to this and shorter. So all depend on the research question. But the main common thing for all the searches are that they have to be developed systematically and bit by bit, take time and make sure that nothing is missed, because it's so easy, just like writing a text. You will miss something. You know, when we write text, we always have to do editing before we send. And the same with search, of course. We have to do a lot of editing and go through every single part of the search to make sure that we have everything in place. This is a search I did, it's already a published paper. I did that a year ago, I think. And after I completed the search, I did evaluate and go through and edit the search. I did the full search translation, uploaded. I was going to send it to the screen and say, we're finished. I did a new check and editing of the search, a review of the search. And I found that I actually have missed one boolean operator. I missed or between economic and cost. You can see the yellow one, right? I missed that little small thingy there. And missing that actually caused me to lose 374 papers. And that was of a result that when I changed that, ended up with 1,120. So if I had not seen that, I would have had 374 papers lesser. And that's a lot on that, a result that in the end had 1,000 papers. Because even one or two papers, even in one single paper in a systematic review or meta-analysis can make a total change of the final recommendations. And if that is a clinical recommendation, that's about patients' health and harm and life, right? So it's very important that not only covering all the search terms that is needed, to also make sure that the search techniques that is used is fully developed to its full, that it's every search term has been provided in the right way, and that you haven't missed any of the techniques that is required to put together the search. Because if something is missed and you screen and you start and then you go back and you go to peer review and they say, well, you know what, you have missed this area, or look at that, that's an error in the search, there's a missed or. There is no way to fix that. You have to start again. You have to redo the search, re-upload the search, and everybody involved in the search has to screen again. We have to extract again. We have to do every single step again. So it's a great responsibility, and also takes part of why it takes a lot of time to really make sure that the search is properly evaluated, that it's adequate for your research question, and include all the different search terms needed to get the best available evidence for the review. Otherwise, you will end up like this and have to start from the beginning. So therefore, we are today going to look at some search strategies and techniques that will help you to not end up in the situation as we see here, or for me, have to redo the entire. I was happy in this situation that I didn't send it for screening, because then I have to ask everybody, I'm sorry, you have to screen everything again. So there are some basic techniques and some tips that can be used to avoid missing anything, and to support a really comprehensive and good search that cover everything, or attempt to find everything that is published in the area matching your research question. We're going to go through that now. Practicing database, I will use, I'm sorry if I do too many medical related examples here, but I will use PubMed today, which is a medical database, of the reason also that it's freely accessible, so nobody have to log in. So you can basically Google and search PubMed, and you will have a search, a database access right ahead without having to logging in anywhere. So it's we will use PubMed as a test database. However, whatever we are doing today and demonstrating today, the same techniques and the same effects will be able to apply it in other database, because there is some general techniques and what shall we say, like approaches to every advanced search independently on the source used. So what we're doing here, same in other databases. Any question before we start? Do we have any question on the introduction? No? All right. So rule number one for any search, not just systematic search, but that is that the selection of keyword is the absolute most important part of any literature search. If you don't have the correct keywords included, you will not get the papers you need. I will give you an example. This is another paper that it's already published. It's about H. pylori and antibiotic resistance in sub-Sahara. It's a systematic review that I worked with a team in New York and in Tanzania a couple of years ago. So the team came to me and said, you know what, we would like to do a study on H. pylori and antibiotic resistance, but we can't find any papers. Before I go on, do you know what H. pylori is? Anybody can help me with the definition of H. pylori so we know what we're talking about? Anybody know what is H. pylori?
Yes, I know. It's a bacteria. One type of bacteria.
Yes, and where in the body do we have problem with this bacteria?
In the stomach, yeah.
Exactly. And it can also cause ulcers in the stomach that can later on develop to cancer. And it's a very hard, as I understand, bacteria to get rid of. It demand quite strong antibiotics and sometimes multiple cures taking in the same time. So there is a high resistance, antibiotic resistance connected to H. pylori that the doctors that I was working with saw every day in their clinics in Tanzania. But they have searched PubMed, H. pylori, antibiotic resistance, sub-Sahara, and they didn't find anything. And they said, how is this possible? I mean, we see patients every day that do not respond to the antibiotic we give them. There's a huge antibiotic resistance in the area we're working. So how is it possible nothing is published? So what do you think here? What could be the issue why we don't get anything? PubMed is a database with 30 million records, specifically on medicine. So how is it possible that they didn't find anything? Any idea?
Maybe the geographic, which is sub-Sahara, maybe that results in this. Maybe you need to write to give another name of the country, maybe.
Good.
Another
Yeah.
region.
Right, because a lot of papers, specifically medical papers, they can be, for example, H. pylori and antibiotic resistance in South Africa, right? Yes, definitely. Country names, yeah, definitely. If we add country name, that could be resolving this. Other things, what else could we add? How can we change this search? We can add country names. Is there another way of writing H. pylori? Anybody know?
Yes, the full name, which is Helicobacter pylori.
Helicobacter pylori. Excellent. Yes, that might change. And antibiotic resistance, there's a lot of antibiotics that they can be resistant from. And we can write drug resistance, for example, right? So going through this, I started very well, good input there and solution. I started, as you suggested there, sorry, I didn't get your name, but I started with looking at country names, right? Which countries are included in sub-Sahara? And that turned out to be a little bit of a project, because what happened, this was about from 1992, the research was based on 1992 to now then. But what happened with countries in sub-Sahara from 1992 to now? You can have a clue here on the slides. Well, they changed names. Countries there's still, unfortunately, war and other conflicts in Africa causing country name change and other things that can cause countries to change their names, right? So I had to go through every single country and check their previous country name and make notes and look at, okay, so they had these previous country names, but were they active in the period 1992 until now? So not only did I have to check this name, I also have to check if they were active country name in the inclusion criteria for this peer review. And that took a long time. And not only were they having different names, also lists I was looking at had different inclusion of what were the country in sub-Sahara. Some lists say, yeah, these countries are considered to be sub-Saharan countries. Other lists didn't have it included. It was a lot about the islands around Mauritius and Seychelles, these kind of smaller islands and smaller countries that sometimes was considered to be Central or North Africa and not sub-Sahara. So I had to be consistent with everything in a systematic review. We have to have consistency. So what I did was that I used PubMed's mesh. I mentioned that in the beginning, that there is a thesaurus included in mesh in PubMed. Same in other databases, they have a thesaurus subject list that do list every, not just in this case, different diseases, but also country names and other things that we can use to specify our inclusion. So I use mesh and looked at the country names and used that list and reported in the review that the countries was selected based on PubMed's mesh list to be consistent. And then I put together a search. I did not only look at the country name, I also look at antibiotic resistance, and I went to see, okay, which antibiotics are actually used in sub-Sahara, because antibiotics also are, there's different antibiotics for H. pylori, and some of them are not available in sub-Sahara. Some of them are only used in North America or in the Middle East. So I worked together with the researchers and physicians over in sub-Sahara, identifying which antibiotics that were commonly used to treat H. pylori in that region. And I added all that together with all the country names. And in the end, we ended up with 125 papers. It was not so much, but we did get 125 papers and were able to publish our review. So this is the process of systematically identifying how can I define my search string to be more inclusive, to not miss any papers? How can I find synonym terms, alternative terms, specific terms, defining these components to get to a result which match my need? So why doesn't the database pick up my request? Well, Google would, of course. It will translate my search. But when it comes to academic databases, you search for the exact letter combination of a search term, not the meaning of a search term. For example, if I search child, I do not automatically get papers that includes children, because I search CHILD. I won't get children's, or I won't get pediatrics, right? I would only get CHILD. And you can think maybe why that is inconvenient. In Google, we will get everything connected to child and the meaning of that. Well, the thing is that academic databases, they are built for you to decide what you need. You maybe don't want to, you maybe just, this is not a good example, but you should be able to explain to the database and include exactly the form of the word that you need. The database should not interpret your question and do a selection for you. This is the main of every academic research, that it's you as a researcher who are the only one who know what you need for your information, to answer your information question. Databases can't do that. They are very stupid, to be honest. It doesn't understand what we mean. And it's therefore, and I will show you some examples of this, but therefore it's very important that before we start, and a part of preparing for the paper, writing the protocol, it's super important to do a plan for your keyword. This will make the entire difference. We cannot go and test a little bit here and add a little bit here to see, okay, now I have 25, that's good, okay, let's go. You have to be very clear with the full inclusion of every keyword before you start search. I couldn't just add and tested some of the countries. I had to do a full list of every country and their possible synonyms. In this case, it was a different country names, right? So we have to demonstrate that we have all the keywords that will be relevant for answering our research question. And also not only that, we need the synonyms to be added to the search to not miss any papers. In the H. pylori example, we didn't get anything with the simple search. By going systematically and adding everything, I found 125 papers, right? And we can't just stop when we feel like, okay, I have 1,000, that's enough. The main thing for the search is not to get enough paper. It's also to demonstrate that you have a search string developed that can show that you have made sure to find all available evidence published that match your research question. So as we saw in an earlier session, it has to be documented to make sure that we have done a search that will cover what we need. We haven't missed anything. These are the best available evidence to build the recommendation for practitioners. So another search example here, diabetes type 2. I can show you quickly. I have a screenshot where if you search diabetes type 2, which is a normal way of expressing this kind of condition, diabetes type 2 is what we're saying, right? But searching diabetes type 2 in PubMed only will give you 980 papers, which is not at all to expect because of a database with like 30 million papers inside. But in the same thing as Africa search, you can see there's many different ways of writing diabetes type 2. You can write it with Roman figures. You can write diabetes mellitus type 2. You can write type 2 diabetes, non-insulin dependent diabetes. There are many different synonyms for the same word. They all mean the same. It's the same disease, right? But you write it in a different way. In Google Scholar, yeah, you will get everything, but it wouldn't be so precise. You will get a lot of things, other things as well. But in the academic context, you are the one that's selecting which synonyms that are relevant to describe your research questions. And adding, I think we have a question, but just concluding, adding all these varieties of the search term, instead of 980, we get 119,671. This is an old slide from a couple of years ago, but you can see making a systematic review with the aim of covering everything that is published, huge difference of concluding the result on 980 papers compared to 119 papers. It's not a good review if you haven't been able to capture all the synonyms. I think, was your name Hamad? I think it was a question, right?
Yes, we have. Zaid is asking,
Zaid,
but
yes.
before we have from Hiba, how to know I included everything?
Yeah, how do we know?
And
well,
what is mesh? Terwide is asking, what is the mesh?
Yeah. So we will
can
go
you
through.
clarify it again? Yes, please.
Absolutely. So I will go through. We will have a look at mesh.
My question is related to the same thing, so you may answer all of them together. My question is, away from domain knowledge, how you can make sure that you included all the synonyms or alternative variations of the strings of text. For example, you are in the medical field and you work on this since a long time. What if you are asked to do something in social science? How would you do it yourself? Is this only on domain knowledge, or you can have like kind of resources, shortcuts, or certain like technique you do it, then you get all of those relevant search words?
Very good. All of these three are very good questions. And yes, they are related, as you're saying. Now, yeah, I'm not a physician, but I do a lot of systematic reviews on medical related topic. I do have to do some research. Doesn't mean that I will be, I will have knowledge, medical knowledge based on that, but there are strategies to identify all possible keyword for a search, and mesh is definitely one of the main strategies that I use. Like, for example, I mentioned mesh to find all the country names and variations, right? The mesh will give me not just the country name, but the variations. If I search mesh for diabetes type 2, I will get all these variations as well. So I will demonstrate mesh when we come to some illustrations of these techniques, definitely. But also by reading paper, analyzing what is published already and see what type of keywords have been used to describe that content in which you are researching in. It's a difference of what researchers' keywords they are using and what the database are using as keywords and, for example, mesh terms. So very good questions, and I think as we move on, I will demonstrate how exactly some strategies for identifying and making sure that you have everything included. But it's again a teamwork where I, as a librarian, for example, I don't have special knowledge in the field, but I have special knowledge in search strategies and techniques in how to identify and analyze the index of databases to identify a good set of search term. And then these are peer reviewed and agreed with a specialist who can guide me if I have missed any aspect or any search term that need to be included. So it's again a teamwork between the specialists and, for example, me then, that is a librarian, to find that. But we will definitely have some examples. So here, let me see, do I have, yes, thesaurus or submesh. So these are the techniques that will be the basic for any search we're doing. It's not different from a quick search or an advanced search or a systematic search. Phrasing, truncation, Boolean operators, field search, including subject headings, thesaurus, or mesh, is the same thing. It's basically a subject headings or thesaurus list in the database guiding us to different synonyms for all the search terms. And search history. We don't need more than this. This is what we need to create these very advanced and specific high quality search strategies. And they are also normal search techniques that we can use for literature reviews or finding something quickly. They work in any database, so it's not connected to a specific database. These are the basic techniques for how to create good search strings. And if we search with, if we start with phrasing, we will do some, if everybody can open PubMed, I will ask everybody to open PubMed. You can Google PubMed and click on the link and you will see this kind of this first page, PubMed opening. We will do some exercise. Everybody finding PubMed? All right. So maybe you heard about Johns Hopkins, which is like a huge research institution and also a hospital chain. Even Tawam Hospital here is connected to Johns Hopkins. So it's a very famous institution. And during COVID, most of you probably came across this map in the beginning, a couple of years or like a year ago, where we can see the spreading, the minute by minute live update of spreading of COVID. And it was Johns Hopkins who produced and established this map. So it's a huge research institution. And what I want you to do now is to use PubMed, you open, and I want you to search for articles about Johns Hopkins. So if everybody do a search on Johns Hopkins and tell me, we can maybe do that in the chat, how many papers you have found on Johns Hopkins. Check in the chat, do this search in PubMed and let me know in the chat how many papers you find. Johns Hopkins. Any results? You have 3. Thank you. Yeah, Mama. Yeah, okay, 3. Any other bet? It's 3. Zainab get 168,145. Any other? 3, 168,000. Oh, so we have everything from 168,000 to 3. How come? Well, this is an example of how the search technique, thank you so much, everybody. That's super good. And this is an example of how the search techniques is determine the result of the search. Because this is the first thing in our list. I think we had listed 5 things, and we will go through them one by one and look at the effect of using them. This is about phrasing. Johns Hopkins is a phrase, right? It's not just one search term. It's a phrase, we call it, with 2 different words, but it means one single thing. Like, for example, heart attack as well. Heart attack is one keyword, but it contains of 2 terms. And if I search Johns Hopkins like this, I indeed get only 3. But do you think it's relevant that we only have 3 papers published on one of the main research institutions in the world? Doesn't make sense, right? Same as H. pylori and antibiotic resistance. This is something not right. And this is not about the choose of keywords, because we're searching Johns Hopkins. This is about a technique, and it's about phrasing. If you instead put Johns Hopkins in quotation marks, like I think some of you actually did. Maybe you have participated in any search session before and done searching, because in academic searching, in the databases, also in Google Scholar, if you put your phrase like Johns Hopkins here, for example, or heart attack or diabetes type 2, a keyword that contains of several terms within quotation mark phrasing, you will search for Johns Hopkins as a phrase. And in this case, you get 168,000 instead of 3. So basically, not applying correct search techniques will generate an incorrect search. It can be more, it can be less, but it won't be correct. So phrasing is our first example. We can take another example here. I will show you with some screenshots instead. If I want to search medical student, if I don't take phrasing, it will search medical and student, which is a difference. If I search medical students, I will get medical student. Same medical college, same thing, medical college, with or without phrasing. If I search in PubMed without phrasing, I get 1 million papers, because it search medical and college. While if I search medical college, I get half, 409,000. So so you can see it can either increase or decrease depending on the search term. In this case, medical college will give anything about medical and some related to college. And medical college will only give papers that talk about medical college specifically. So it's more precise. It helps us to precise our search. If I don't do phrasing and tell the database exactly how I would like the search to be conducted, here we can see an interpretation of the search without phrasing. This is what the database do. Without telling the database exactly how you would like to search, it will just come up with a solution, and they are not smart. Look at that. They have search in medic, all fields, medical, medicalization, pharmaceutical, medications, preparations, college, only this is absolutely not a search that gives us medical college. And the result of 1 million of everything from pharmaceutical to medicalization to colleges will be too much to screen, right? Imagine a systematic review where you have to look at everything. It is not possible. So it is important to be specific with the search techniques to be sure that you have a search that is actually giving you the result you need. That is number one. Number two of the techniques that we will look at and also have a huge impact and change on the search is truncation. Even if you haven't heard the word before, I'm sure you've seen that sometimes in searches we use an asterisk directly on the search term to indicate that, yeah, I'm not only interested in child, I'm also interested in children, children's, any other variation of that search term. So that will be the solution. For example, if I want to search for child, children, children's, doesn't matter in the paper if they say child asthma or children with asthma, right? Anything. It's about the concept of children and asthma. But the database, as we've seen in the previous slide, oops, sorry, it will go on the exact letter combination and will not understand your question. So if I look at a search example again, I can do that here on the screen, looking at truncating animals without or not truncating animals. You can see here, if I search in PubMed again, animal, I get 500,000. If I truncate animal, I get 1,166,000, a huge difference. And what was the difference? What happened here? If I put animal without a truncation, animal with a truncation, what is the main keyword I will miss if I do not truncate in this case? Anybody have an idea?
The plural form of animal.
Yeah, correct. Animals, right? Yeah. And if I'm looking at animal study or animals or animal, doesn't matter, right? Yeah. So truncation is used to make sure that we have all form of the word included. Searching for child will not automatically give you everything, child, children. Searching for animal won't give you animals. So truncation will allow you to search for all forms. Truncation can be used in most search terms, but there are some situations where we cannot use truncation. For example, if we have very broad search terms like car, it will give you cardiovascular, cart, it's not relevant. So in that case, you basically have to search on each variation. For example, car, cars, you have to add all variations. Otherwise, it will be too much. You can also not truncate within a phrase. You cannot say, like, to the right here, we have child, children, and right. It's not possible. You can only have one truncation on the last search term of the phrased word. So in that case, we have to search child right and children's right. So it will be a synonym inclusion, you can say. But most terms, if they are not like car, for example, then it's supposed to be truncated and will help you to find all possible forms for the search term. See, that was two of 5. Boolean operators, third one, you probably came across that as well. That is simply the operators that we use to combine and describe the relation between the words in our search string. Am I looking, for example, on papers about cancer and children? I will use the operation as the Boolean operator and to say that, yeah, I'm not interested in anything about cancer or anything about children. I want papers that include cancer and children. If I have synonyms, I use or, like my country names, for example, or in this case, breast cancer or breast neoplasm. I create a search string where I include all the synonyms and I combine them with an or. There's also a Boolean operator that is called not. And I never use that, and I wouldn't recommend using it. It seems like a good alternative. For example, cancer, not breast neoplasm. If you, for example, want to exclude breast cancer but look at all other cancer forms, that could be handy. But the problem is that if you have a huge study covering every aspect of cancer, including breast neoplasm, but it also is, for example, testicle cancer that is very relevant for you, you will miss that paper if breast neoplasm anywhere is mentioned anywhere in that paper. So, for example, if you look at breast cancer, and for males, for example, if you say breast cancer, not females, you will miss any study that look at females and males that might have information that is important for you to include on male breast cancer patients. So it's better to work with other terms and restructure your search what you call it, a search string with other terms instead of using not. Not is not helpful. So do not use not. It's a tempting Boolean operator to use, but it's not so useful. You will miss more than you earn. So I would like you to use PubMed again. And maybe I have a slide. No, I don't have. So if you please do two search. You do one search first, search cancer, and, or we can do like this. I know we're running out of time a bit. So we can have a look at these two search strings. We have cancer and children, or child with an truncation. Then we have cancer or children. Which of those search examples will generate the highest number of results, and why? Will it be cancer and children that will generate most papers, or will it be cancer or children?
Cancer or children.
Why is that?
It will result in all papers with the word cancer and all the papers with the word child. But in the first string, it requires the papers that contains both words, cancer and child, at the same time.
Correct, right? And if I'm looking at child cancer, that's what I want. I don't want anything about cancer in general or children in general, right? That will be too broad. So cancer and children. So this and combination will ensure me that all the different parts of my search will be combined properly. So for example, H. pylori and antibiotic resistance. But Sub-Sahara or Tanzania or South Africa or Reunion, right, for all the synonyms. So or is used for synonyms and is used to combine the search string's main components. Great, thank you. So now we have looked at truncation, phrasing, and Boolean operator. And the next two things we need is to look at field search and search history to make a good search. And in databases, there is a lot of the time both advanced and basic search options. And we should not be afraid to use the advanced search, because advanced search doesn't mean that it's more complicated. It actually means that it gives us more options to be more precise in our search. While the basic search, a lot of the time, do interpret the search as I showed you before. So that's a very low precision. Why, if you use the advanced search and where you can apply all these search techniques, you will have a better high precision for your search. And one of the things that you can use in advanced search is that you can apply different search fields. In PubMed, for example, in the advanced search option, you can see there is a drop-down menu that you will find in other databases as well, where you can choose to say in which field of the bibliographic record, I will show you what that is in a bit, you like to place your search terms. So you can choose where you would like to search. And this is a little bit small, but in databases, academic database, we don't search in the full paper. That will be too unspecific. We search in the information page for the paper, which is called the bibliographic record. So every paper added to a database have this basic information page on which we search. So we don't search the full text. It could be tempting. You could feel like that will be great. Why am I not searching the full text? Well, you will never end searching. It will be so unspecific. So a bibliographic record is added to the database, and that's where we search. So basically, if I search without choosing where in this bibliographic record, if I choose where in the, if I search without telling the databases where I would like to make my search in the bibliographic record, I will get a result that gives me not so specific return of what I need. Going back to, for example, medical college, searching that in the basic search, does this paper, which is one of our results from that search, does it have anything to do with medical college? It's progress of artificial intelligence in diabetic retinopathy screening, right? Nothing about medical college. So why does this paper end up in our result list? Can anybody see? Why have we got medical college here?
Muhammad answered, because of the affiliation.
Right.
It's written medical college hospital, medical college in Beijing, medical center.
Exactly, because we didn't tell the database in which of these fields we want to search. So it searched all fields: authors, source, document type, subject terms, affiliations, abstract, author affiliations, yes, and thesaurus, anything. So it's not a specific search. So field search, where we can find something that more describe a topic, would be, for example, if we search all fields, it will be anywhere like we had now. It won't be so specific. But abstract, the conclusion of the paper, of course, if we tell the database that, yes, please do search for our term in abstract instead, or in title, that will be very specific and probably also give us papers that have something to do with medical education rather than that somebody is affiliated to medical education. Abstract is medium precision search, where the database are looking for where are these terms that I am searching for available in the abstract. So it's a database who locate those. While in the title, of course, that's very high precision, because if you have a paper where your search term is located in the title, that most likely that paper is about your topic, right? So getting back to also, we will add the last thing before I show an example. The search history that is available in all databases, mostly databases, helps us to keep track on how we have searched and help us to combine things in the different fields. You will have a full overview of what you have done through the search history and combined different fields, different search terms, and or it will take care of the entire combination. Because if you put in all your search terms in the same time in one long search, you will most likely face some problems. It's hard to analyze what is the result, and most of the time it will end up with an error result. So the main thing for a systematic review is to be systematic, and that's what we do in the search as well. We first identify all the research related keywords. Then we put them in one by one in the database and choose in which field we want them to be searched and which techniques that should be used. So before we go to thesaurus, I will just do a demonstration here on how that is done. Can you now see PubMed, or do I need to reshare? Can you see PubMed?
No, we can see the slides.
You can see the slide. Okay, I will reshare here now. Yes. So this is PubMed, and it works the same in every database. So now I choose the advanced search instead of the basic search, because here I can choose in which search field I like to search. If I search title here, we can say, okay, we can do COVID in title. I add that here. It will automatically go to the search history. See here, here is a search history showing everything that I have done and the result of that. So the search history in databases are automatically generated when you start searching. And if I want to go a little bit broader, I can take title and abstract COVID. Right? Here I search paper with the title COVID, but if I want paper with title or abstract, which is a good selection to find papers on COVID, I will have another different result. I have 157 papers instead of 122. So how I use and which fields I use for my search also affect the search result, together which search terms I use. Now I have cheated a bit, and I have prepared a search term with all the variation that I can find of COVID-19 search terms. You can do it in title and abstract here. I copied and pasted them in, just as I search for the terms of African country. I went through MESH, I'll show you in a bit, and found different term variations for COVID-19. And searching that in title and abstract, instead of 157,000, I get 170,000 papers by defining all the different synonyms. This can be much more or lesser depending on the search term. You remember in diabetes type 2, it was a huge difference, but COVID being a quite new and recent study area, you see that, well, we have 20,000 different or something. That is quite a lot anyway. And doing the exercise of finding the different keywords will help. So when I search, to do a systematic search, I use the advanced search and I take my pre-prepared set of search terms and I put them in one by one, or I put all the synonyms in here in one set. That is possible as well. But doing them one by one when you start is much more efficient, because you will be able to analyze which search terms works if there's something not working. Doing what I did now can cause you to get errors, so you cannot know if that is a correct results or not. So to do it one by one and then combine it is much more efficient and also recommended. I always do that when I search. Now I just had to do a shortcut because of time to show you what we have got. So let's say I have COVID and then I want to have, let's say, or shall we do diabetes? I think so. As diabetes is one of the risk group. I can search diabetes to get type 1, type 2, anything. I'll do a title and abstract search, diabetes. I search that, right? And I do a very quick search, but if I'm happy with all my synonyms, put in all my search, I can then later on catch up the different part of my search, saying that, okay, diabetes, or wait a minute, diabetic. See, I didn't do a good search, did I? Can do like this, diabetes, diabetic. That will be better, right? So I do diabetes, diabetic. diabetic food, etc. So I have to evaluate, what do I have? What do I want to include? Because it's also a difference here in the result. Let's say I take diabetic like that, diabetes, diabetic, add to query, and COVID. I will have the result in a combined search string that I do not have to keep track on how to combine and or between the searches, the brackets, everything that you have to consider in a search to get a good result. The search history will take care of that. And here we have 5,266 papers that includes diabetes and COVID. Right? Now I only searched in title and abstract. So basically, I only have papers that either have diabetes type 2 or COVID in the title and abstract. So in systematic reviews, I always do a combination of title and abstract, and the absolute last part of our search strategies and methods using is also to use a thesaurus, a mesh, or a subject headings. Because if I go here to mesh in PubMed, I search diabetes. I don't have to use any techniques here because it's a list. I can have a look here at diabetes mellitus, and I will get definition of what diabetes mellitus is. And I can also have different alternative term to diabetes. If I look at diabetes mellitus type 2, which I used an example, and the question was, how did I find all the synonyms? Where here I found them. Look, this is a great resource. If I go to the thesaurus, actually is connected to the word treasure from Greek, and it's a treasure. Thesaurus is a treasure of keywords. It's a help to find synonyms for my search terms. So when I do a systematic review, I always write in the methodology, and I do work systematically to go to the thesaurus of each database, and I look at what are the synonym terms. It's called entry terms here. And I take them and I create an OR search and put them in my title and abstract search. And that's what I did with COVID as well. I went to search for COVID. COVID-19. Oida. Yes, here we go. COVID-19. Here we go. And under COVID-19, I get the treasure of every single possible synonym that has been used, found in research articles on COVID-19. And that was, I created an OR string of that, which I copy and paste quickly. So this is your, I would say, in any database, the first strategy that you can adopt, and also document that in your paper, that you have systematically used the thesaurus of the database to identify the synonyms. Together with your special knowledge and together with your teamwork, you identify which entities, which search terms, basic search terms need to be included, how they will be combined. And then you go to a thesaurus or a mesh and find the synonym systematically for each single search term. Now, if I use COVID-19 from the thesaurus or mesh instead, I search COVID-19 in okay, I add to search builder, search it in the database, there will be a different result compared to my previous search. I will delete this combination. Looking at COVID, we had here COVID in title and abstract, 157 papers. We had all the synonyms, title and abstract, 170, and COVID-19 in mesh, 106. So there is a difference because I have searched in different search fields of the database. So in this case, for example, COVID-19 in mesh, yeah, it could be in title, could be in abstract, but definitely the mesh terms set for this paper is also, it does also include COVID-19. And the mesh terms are the only place in a bibliographic record, in a database, where there is a human where this person with special knowledge have read the paper and identify key terms describing the content of the paper. So it's very specific, the most specific place to search in the database. And if I now do a combination of COVID only, I can search COVID mesh or COVID in title and abstract, any of those. Instead of 106 or 170, what did we get on the other one? Instead of 170 and 106, I get 176 papers, which is of course a much better result, covering more than any of these search attempts before, depending on that I did a search in different fields. Because some of the papers may not have an abstract. They do have a title, but some doesn't have mesh. And the most recent papers do not have a mesh or thesaurus term, because it will take some months before the full bibliographic record for somebody have read the paper and described the content with a mesh or a thesaurus term. So what I do when I do a systematic search is that I take one search term at the time. So this is COVID search term. I do a search in title and abstract, and I combine that with an OR in mesh, and I get a better result than just searching any of the fields together. So not only do I do a combination of different search terms, I also combine the fields. Same thing here, diabetes. I know we are about to run out of time, but we can do the same thing with diabetes. I take diabetes from mesh. Let me see here. I won't be able to do, as I mentioned, these searches take months, so I can't do a full search. But I think with these examples, you will get an idea of how to work with the search field combination. So I take diabetes mellitus from the mesh. I go to my advanced search, and I combine diabetes mellitus from the mesh with diabetes in title and abstract, and OR, because these are not synonym terms, but in synonym different fields. I do a search, and I will get a much better result than any of these terms separately. See here, instead of 400,000, I get 700,000. And when I'm happy with combining fields and having all synonyms for every single part of my search, then first I do the combination. I do not try to make a long search to start with. I go very systematically in with the help of the search history and take one search unit at the time, one search term at the time, find all synonyms, find all different field variations using mesh, looking at synonyms, extra synonyms I can get from the mesh, and then when I have separate search strategies for those, I do the combination. So in this case, I have every search term with an OR, with COVID, combined with an AND of a very limited, but just to show you here, search ring for diabetes mellitus. So here are my two entities, right? So the two different entities, I need something with diabetes and COVID in my paper, but it can be COVID-19, COVID 2019, 2019 and COVID. Doesn't matter how COVID is written, because it's the content of COVID. It doesn't matter how diabetes is written either. But both of these terms, any of these synonyms, but both of these terms should be included in my paper. And in the end, then I will have a very good structured search that contains diabetes and COVID in either title, abstract, or mesh, which are the three main search fields for content in my search. So this is about this is the basic structure for how you build your search. And let's see, we go back to, where is my presentation? Here we go. And how to build the search and how to work systematically with your search development. You do a search planning, that's part of the protocol. You make sure to have every single search term matching your criteria by using papers to analyze what search term they have, using mesh to see what are the synonym terms, and work with your colleagues to see so you have everything included. You search one by one in the database, advanced search, using the search history, and not only combining the synonyms, but you also combine different fields. That is the best possible way to structure a good search, both for systematic reviews and for any advanced searches. All right, so we have reached the end. We have even exceeded the time a bit. I hope that's okay for everybody. But just also remember, when you do the search, while you're searching, document what you're doing. The search history will give you all the details you need to make a documentation of the result of the search. So everything that in the end will create the final search has to be documented in a separate appendix for the review. And the search history is very helpful for that, of course. Before I open up for question also, there are two major help tools for peer reviewing search string. One is PRESS, that gives you detailed checklist to see so you have done a correct search and everything is combined in a good way. And the latest one is also PRISMA, has a PRISMA checklist for searching, where you can go through and make sure before you finalize the search, and as you use as a support for the pre-search, to make sure that you build your search in a systematic way and have all operators and techniques and search terms represented in the best possible way so you can find all evidence needed. And librarians are, of course, available to help with that. We can support you throughout working with your search. We can also, I do a lot of co-authoring of systematic reviews where I'm part of the team and writing up the methodology, creating the search, uploading and performing the search. But of course, we're available to advise in every step of the method and search part of your systematic reviews or literature reviews. For that sake, please do contact us and ask any question about search techniques, reporting guidelines, the process itself, how you work to minimize bias in the process, anything of what I presented today. We are available to help with that. And you have the guide here as well with more details on our website. I apologize, we went over a little bit now as well. We had some good questions, and I will be here some more minutes if we have any more additional questions for this specific section about searching as well. Any other questions?
Ali asked one question that is it always recommended to add mesh?
Yeah, I will say so. It will make a big difference. Some databases don't have mesh. So as you saw, there is anything that can increase the quality of the search should be added, and searching in different fields will increase the result. As I mentioned, some papers doesn't have abstract. Most recent paper don't have mesh, so it's not an alternative to only search mesh or only search title or abstract. All of these fields together will be a good selection. It's like you can compare it with using synonyms. If I didn't add all the country names to the antibiotic resistance search, I wouldn't get all this every possible paper available. If I don't use all the different possible search fields, I will miss some papers as well. So it's like same way of working with synonyms. It is recommended to be specific with the selection of search fields and combine them, do different search fields in the search. Yeah. if it's possible. I think we have more chat questions. That's right. Okay, always recommended. Great.
Okay, we have from Mariam, what is the difference between PubMed and PubMed central databases?
Yeah, so PubMed Central, well, I mean, you can find PubMed, PubMed Central is part of PubMed basically, and PubMed Central is a part that works with open access journals a lot. But if you search PubMed, as I showed today, you will include both of them. It's just a smaller aspect, or like an aspect of PubMed, PubMed database. See, we have...
And Mustafa is asking that there will be other sessions to cover other parts of systematic review, such as data extraction and so on.
Yeah, I know that my colleagues in public health, for example, over at College of Medicine, they do. Sometimes we have workshops together where we have a statistician and somebody that is a subject specialist or know about extraction, for example. We don't have anything planned right now at the college, but it might be that the College of Graduate Studies, based on your request, that we can put something together for these parts as well. Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much for your feedback. And this is quite a comprehensive topic. But I hope this gives you an startup insight in some techniques and requirement for this type of studies. We have any more questions? No more questions? All right. Thank you, everyone. It's been a pleasure. I'm really happy to have received so many interesting questions that help to specify this session further. And I'm happy to share the slides with all of you. I will arrange that through the College of Graduate Studies. And I think the recordings will be available as well on their website.
Yes. Thank you, Ms. Linda. Thank you very much for this helpful session and workshop. And I will arrange for uploading the recording in the YouTube, and the slides I will share it to all the students, inshallah.
Super, that's very helpful. Thank you so much. And everybody,
yes.
Please feel free to contact me, give me a call, email me, visit me in my office. Oh, I'm starting writing this one. Office at the College of Medicine. If you have any questions related to this workshop or in general about systematic reviews and meta-analysis, methodology, searching, or how to work with this type of research. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a good afternoon and a great weekend. Thank you for participating today.
Thank you, Ms. Linda, and thank you all for attending. Please kindly, if you have time, just give us your feedback using the link. I added the link in the chat and I will add it one more time. Thank you, Ms. Linda. Thank you all for attending.
Thank you for moderating as well. Thank you so much. Have a great weekend, everybody. Take care.
Thank you.
See you. Bye. Bye.
Thank you.